Good evening. Welcome to the City School District of Albany Board of Education meeting. If you intend to speak in public comment, we welcome your voice and your viewpoint, and there is a sign-up sheet on the table over on the side. Now would be a wonderful time to sign up. For those of you who like to say the Pledge of Allegiance, we invite you to stand with us. There is a flag over to my right. We pledge allegiance to the flag In addition to the Pledge of Allegiance, we always focus our meeting by restating the mission of the City School District of Albany, which is to work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. Superintendent Adams, do you have a report for us?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Like their peers throughout the state, our students in grades 3 through 8 participated in the annual English Language Arts exam this week. The testing went smoothly at all of our schools with the exception of an unplanned fire alarm at North Albany Academy on Wednesday morning that postponed the second part of the exam by one day. Our students in grades 3-5 at North Albany and grades 6-8 at the Albany International Center completed the exam today. I also want to let everyone know that our district was not affected by the difficulties with computer-based testing that some school districts in the state experienced. All of our testing is paper-based. Finally, a reminder that the annual state exam is coming up Monday, coming up May 1st and May 2nd. I had the pleasure of joining several members of our team at the University at Albany today for the New York State Council of School Superintendents Diversity and Inclusivity Regional Workshop and Forum. The event was organized by the NISCUS Commission on Diversity and Inclusivity. I'm honored to have been recently invited to serve on this commission as well. The programs at today's event were designed for teams of district leaders to examine best practices and research on evolving our schools to meet the opportunities and challenges of diversity and cultural inclusivity. I attended together with Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Instruction, Lori McKenna, Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Carrie Canzoni-Ball, District Improvement Director, Michelle Bridgewater, and Laura France, the President of our Teachers Union. I also had the pleasure of introducing Albany High School students who performed at the event this morning. Our Albinettes and Troubadours performed separately, and they also performed together as Albany High's Chamber Choir. They did a beautiful job, as always, under the direction of Brendan Hoffman. We are entering into the final stages of our budget development process tonight. I want to express my gratitude to our state elected officials for their continued support and their strong support of public education in the 2019-2020 state budget. I particularly want to thank our State Senator Neil Breslin and our Assembly Representatives Pat Fahey and John McDonald for their steadfast advocacy on behalf of all of our students, our schools, and our community. Their continued support has been a big reason why our budget discussion this evening will be much different than it has been in recent meetings. 2 additional reminders related to our May 21st budget vote. The voter registration deadline is May 6th. If you are at least 18 years old, a citizen of the United States, and a resident of the city of Albany for at least 30 days, you are eligible to vote. If you are not currently registered to vote, you can do so with Albany County Board of Elections. We have registration forms available here tonight. You may also contact the County Board of Elections or our School District Board of Education clerk, Sierra Sturdivant. I want to let our voters know that in the 8th and 14th wards, we know that we will have a new voting location for the school budget this year. If you voted last year at Bethany Reformed Church on New Scotland Avenue, your new voting location is the McCauley Building at Maria College. The college is located at the corner of New Scotland and South Manning Boulevard. The park entrance for the McCauley Building is off of South Manning. This will be the polling place for voters in districts 1 through 4 of the 8th Ward and all voters in the 14th Ward. Voters in the 8th Ward, districts 5 through 9, will continue to vote at the Albany School of Humanities. We have a searchable directory of voting locations in the 2019-20 Budget News section at albanyschools.org. You may also give us a call if you have any questions. A quick reminder that we have moved the date of our next board meeting. That meeting will be on Tuesday, April 16th, right here at Albany High, beginning at 7 p.m. The meeting was originally scheduled for Thursday of that week and has been moved to Tuesday. With March behind us and mild weather in the extended forecast, it is starting to look a little bit like spring, except for the temperature over yesterday and a little bit today. We could be free and clear of inclement weather for the duration of the school year. We were able to manage the winter months without using any of our 3 snow days. This means that we will observe those days off around Memorial Day weekend, as long as Mother Nature continues to cooperate. All of our schools and offices will be closed from Thursday, May 23rd through Tuesday, May 28th. Please note that spring recess is also coming up beginning Friday, April 19th. This concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Superintendent Adams. This is in time in our meeting we set aside to hear from district residents, parents, students, and other members of the public. We welcome community input about the decisions we are making. In addition to accepting comments during this public comment period, we also accept comments by email, phone, and postal mail. If you're speaking tonight while you're making your remarks, please keep in mind that by law, information about individual students and specific staff cannot be shared. Every student and every staff member deserves to know that concerns about them will not be aired in public. Also, please keep in mind that public comment is not the best place to first alert the district to a concern you have. Please share concerns first with relevant staff, such as the teacher or principal. And if you feel the concern is not addressed adequately, appeal that to that person's supervisor up the chain of command, if necessary, to the superintendent. Decisions made by the superintendent may be appealed to the board. Please note that the board generally does not respond during the public comment period. If you need a response, we ask you that you consider contacting us by email, phone, or postal mail. When recognized by me, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. You'll be given a 1-minute notice and a 10-second notice by Ms. Lang, and I will notify you if your time has expired. The first name on the list is Margot Wyan. We need you to speak into the mic because it's recorded. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Margot Wyan. I'm a resident of Albany City, and I'm speaking as an APSTA member, just on the draft calendar that I know you're about to adopt, and probably won't be able to make any changes at this late date because I know you've been considering it for a while. The only small bit of input I would have, I've gotten feedback from members on the draft, is to consider on the give back days when we have no use snow days, the order that they're used. And I don't know if we're stuck with the order because it's Capital Region BOCES and we're stuck with the order they use them in. But I do know that some other districts further north that a lot of the teachers live in, because some teachers commute, have Friday off regardless. So if we had that as the last give back, you would have less impact on instruction, if a teacher has to stay home to take care of their kids because they have the day off and we don't, kind of thing. Obviously, it's a very small little correction, but if it's something that can be considered on future calendars, then maybe that'll make things even better, because I know as a resident of Albany, I want the teacher in front of my kid every moment they can be. So just to have the least impact on instruction, might as well have our teachers here every day they can be.
Thank you, Ms. Wyan. Alana Klein.
Good evening, everyone. Alana Klein, 29 Glenwood. I do live in Albany, right by New Scotland Elementary. I saw the calendar on the budget, or on the agenda. I thought I was a little perplexed by that. I thought that was resolved a couple months ago. But anyways, my big thing from last year with recognizing Eid as a school holiday is a moot point, if you will, because it's expected to fall on a weekend, and I know it's on the back burner, so to speak. My main reason coming here tonight is most of the topics have addressed school safety, and I saw something on the news that I believe the state assembly passed a law that would allow school districts to have cameras on the stop signs of their school buses. I'm not gonna get into the semantics or the whatever why that has to be allowed instead of it just being as it is, but apparently that's how it is. So if the New York State Senate passes it, which I don't know if they have because that was about a week ago, I fully expect Governor Cuomo to sign it, and I just hope that this board will take any immediate action to put cameras on the stop signs on buses that pull out and flash, because some people do ignore those. I just saw one. I forgot what road I was on the other day that someone kind of stopped almost dead even with the school bus, and while the signs were still out, they blew past it, almost like if you stop under a red light and you're not sure if you can go or not. But I just hope that when and if that does pass the state and we are allowed to take such action, that we do take such action, because the safety of our students has to be priority number one. There's obviously a lot of priorities, but student safety has to be one of them. So I hope you'll take that action when and if that time comes. Justice for El-Azhar. Believe survivors boycott the NRA. Black Lives Matter. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. I do want to clarify, since both commenters mentioned the calendar, we did adopt the school calendar maybe 2 board meetings ago. It was on an earlier version of our agenda for tonight for reconsideration, and there were a couple of questions about the snow day order, nothing having to do with Eid. We are not going to address that tonight because of matters of time, so it was removed from the agenda prior to this meeting beginning, but you should, if you're interested, keep an eye on future agendas because it will be coming back. That said, that brings us now to the time of our meeting we call routine consent. The routine consent agenda is the part of our meeting where we approve routine matters for the district. That usually includes items like contracts, field trips, and hiring of personnel and other similar matters. We vote on these as a group with no discussion, which allows us to use our meeting time more efficiently. Nonetheless, each Board of Education member has the option to set aside any routine consent item in order to require discussion and separate vote on that item. I will now entertain a motion to adopt the routine consent agenda. Ms. Roach, seconded by Ms. Wilson. Are there any set-asides? Dr. Chatur.
I'd like to set aside 15G, Research Foundation at SUNY.
Ms.
F,
Lang.
language, line, solution, language.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lang, could you repeat that?
Number F, language, line, solutions, language, line, service, Inc.
Ms. Roach.
I was just seconding the set aside for G.
Thank you very much. And I apologize, Ms. Krejci. I'm doing my best to switch, and I made a mistake. So all in favor of adopting the routine consent agenda, less item 15G and item F? That is unanimous. Can I get a motion to adopt 15G, the Research Center? Motion by Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion? Dr. Chatur.
So the Research Foundation of SUNY item 15G talks about the STEP program, and while I'm all in support for the program, I just want to abstain from it because it specifically mentions the Cancer Research Center where I'm employed, and this will be placing students in my building.
All in favor? That is Ms. Krejci, Ms. Smith, Ms. Savage, Ms. Lang, Ms. Wilson, Ms. Alexander Mann. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Dr. Chatur. Motion carries. May I have a motion to adopt item F, the Language Line Solutions contract? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Alexander Mann. Any discussion? Ms. Lang.
So the purpose sides provide ENL students, families. I was wondering if how this was going to be implemented in the schools, at the nurse's office, over the phone. I'm a little wanted to know really how this was going to and what percentage of teachers or principals or schools would have access to this phone and video access, or if this is, or how this is going to work. This is, I believe, our third vendor on translation services, so I just want to make sure that we have everything set up to streamline.
Madam President, members of the board, Secretary Lang, I will turn the time to Ms. Leffler.
I think it's working. Yes. So Language Line Solutions came to our attention because a nurse at AIC has been utilizing the services because oftentimes it's very difficult on a nurse's visit and some other situations that come up to get a real live translator or interpreter to the school. She has found that it's been very successful. We've also had some difficulties with some of the languages getting a live person to come through all language translation services. So this is something that Mr. Giglio, the Director of Refugee Services, has and I have discussed to pilot at AIC, Delaware, and the high school. He's going to bring folks together around a training and to pilot it there for the video and the phone to see if those will serve our needs alongside having a physical person come for translation services.
So I think Ms. Lang asked how many schools and how many facilities would have access to this. Is this really just a very small pilot at this point, or is it broader
Right,
than
those
that?
three schools, AIC, Delaware, and Albany High, is what Mr. Giglio had targeted to be the places to pilot it, to get some feedback and information about the effectiveness of it.
So I know we did this as a pilot for our last translation grant, so I'm just wondering if there was a different mode of PD for our teachers or staff to use this.
One of the issues with the last service that we had, I think it was through Lexikey. I think that's the one where they had the pilot. There was just some glitches with that. They really didn't have the capacity. And this service appears to, they're on the New York State contract. They've provided lots of statistics in terms of how many interpreters and translators and 24/7 access. They're just a larger organization that can vet a larger number of translators and have them available, whereas Lexikey is more of a smaller organization. So the thought is that we will find more success with this one.
And I'm very excited. I've been pushing for this and making sure that all our teachers, our nurses, and the buildings have it, so I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome.
All in favor of adopting Language Line? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. That is the end of our routine consent agenda. We always structure our meetings to have our actions first, and the next action is a rather significant one. We have spent much of the entire time I have been on the school board for the last 4 years talking about how to address our needs for middle schools. We know that at this time some of our 6th grade students are still in elementary school, and we know that that is not serving them as well as a middle school environment does. We have had 2 full public community meetings, grade configuration 1, to get to the decision to make a grade 6-8 school district, and grade configuration 2 to recommend particular sites where we might do that. We have spent the better part of the last 18 months talking about where and how we might want to do that, and the better part of the last 6 months figuring out exactly how North Albany Academy would serve as a new facility for us. And we are finally at the time when we can adopt the legal documents that will support that decision. I am very proud of this decision. I think it shows a long-term commitment to the community around North Albany. I know that community has been through a tremendous amount of change through the district and through other demographic factors, but we are committed to providing services to that community and providing community use of our facilities in that community as much as we possibly can. I'm also particularly proud that this new middle school will for sure provide an equitable third middle school with similar comparable facilities to our facilities at Myers and Hackett, which is something we've needed for some time. So with that introduction, I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the 6 items. There are 6, they're numbered 1, A, B, and C, and 2, A, B, and C, but my legal counsel assures me we can do this with one big vote. So I would like to entertain a motion to adopt them all. I'm going to give Ms. Smith the privilege, as she has served studiously on the Facilities Committee through most of this time, and a second to Dr. Tatur, because he raised his hand first, I think. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all very, very much. Our second action tonight is much more recent in its endeavor, that we have discovered it, and I think we are going to have on the agenda, it's got an action first, but I think we're going to do a presentation first and then the 2 actions. Is that okay? Okay, so let's go ahead with the presentation, and then we'll have the action.
I don't have a plug. So at this time, Dr. Cecily Wilson-Turner and Ms. Lori McKenna will come forward to review some of the items that we have had with regard to looking at O'Neill and the North Albany Academy enrollment options, and reviewing some of the information that we have received in terms of feedback from our community meetings, and then looking at some of the recommendations that we would be making to the board. So with that, ladies, thank you so very much.
Good evening. So as you just mentioned, for the last several board meetings, we've been discussing enrollment for the 2019-20 school year. And as you recall, there were 3 primary factors that contributed to us needing to reevaluate our enrollment for next year and moving forward. One was the enrollment growth at Edmond O'Neill and the space that we needed to add another team of students at O'Neill, and we just don't have the space to do that. Another factor that contributed to our reevaluation was around the district-wide budget challenges for the 2019-20 school year that we've been facing recently. And then the third reason was the decline of our elementary enrollment district-wide. So because of those 3 factors, we have presented you with the 3 options. I'll quickly review them for you, and then we can have conversation around the different options. So as you recall, option 1 was to expand Arbor Hill Elementary School and North Albany Academy to include 6th grade, from a pre-K 5 school to a pre-K 6 school. This would then reduce the 6th grade enrollment at Edmond O'Neill by 1 team. 2 of our elementary schools would continue to feed into Edmond O'Neill. Option number 2 would be to repurpose North Albany as an elementary school to a 6th grade academy. We currently have 4 elementary schools that feed into North Albany. To Edmond O'Neill, North Albany, Schuyler, Sheridan Prep, and Arbor Hill. We would take those current 5th graders and repurpose North Albany to a 6th grade academy, therefore eliminating 6th grade from Edmond O'Neill altogether, again reducing the enrollment at Edmond O'Neill. The third option that we presented to you for the last several board meetings was repurposing again North Albany from a pre-K through 5 elementary school to a temporary small middle school. So North Albany current 5th graders and Schuyler Achievement 5th graders would then attend North Albany for 6th grade, and then Arbor Hill and Sheridan Prep would continue to feed into O'Neill, again reducing the number of 6th graders at North Albany. Feeding into O'Neill. Both options 2 and 3 would have a budget savings between $1.67 and $2 million.
So I think now is a good time for us to pause, because I would love to make one decision separate from the other. I would like to just get clarification, though. The budget savings is a little bit less than that now, right? We're anticipating it more in the 1.3 area as per the budget slides. Okay, so that was a bit of adjustment to the way that we perceive the budget savings. It's still a considerable amount of money, but it is a little bit less than we had been previously thinking. So with that, introduction, I recall that at our last meeting 2 weeks ago, when we had a very substantial and extended discussion around this topic, the general positions seem to be leaning towards option 3. And I'm wondering if my board colleagues feel that they are ready to vote on this topic. If so, I would like to make a motion that we adopt option 3, which is to operate North Albany Academy as a 6 through 8 middle school beginning next year and rolling one grade up at a time. So that is my motion. Does I have a second? Ms. Alexander Mann. Any discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. And while we are on that topic, I think that this resolution is necessary to implement that legally. So we're going to have the new middle school resolution, which is listed as item G1 for those of you tracking along. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the new middle school resolution identified as in action item G1 on our agenda. Do I have a motion? Ms. Wilson, do I have a second? Ms. Krejci, all in favor? That is also unanimous. Ladies, would you like to return us to the more challenging aspect of this decision?
So the second consideration is how we will then re-enroll or reseat the current North Albany Elementary School students. And over the course of the last few months, we've discussed a few enrollment options, and at our last board meeting, a third enrollment or reseating option became available that we wanted to explore today. So our first option was to place all of the North Albany attendance zone students into Arbor Hill Elementary School, and all other students return back to their current neighborhood school. We've determined through our community forums, a discussion on this floor, that that is not a viable option because of the transportation concerns of students having to travel between Arbor Hill Elementary School and North Albany Academy. So the remainder of the presentation will focus on re-enrollment options 2 and 3. Re-enrollment option 2 has the North Albany students who were zoned for North Albany offered a special reseating process where we take the available open seats in the district and place those students there, and all other North Albany students will return to their home school or neighborhood school. Re-enrollment option 3, it takes all of the current North Albany Academy students and provides them with a reseating option in which we would use a lottery to determine their seating for any available space in our schools. So I'm going to take you through those options. But before I do that, I'm going to explain how we currently enroll students at the elementary level, just so you have that as a foundation. And there's one option up here that I didn't add that I will discuss. So the majority of our students are placed in their neighborhood school, and that's a school determined by their address. However, our families do have the option to pursue what is called open enrollment, where each year in May an application goes out and families get to choose 2 schools that they would prefer to attend in lieu of their neighborhood school. In August, based on space available, myself and the Central Registrar and Pupil Personnel Services and building principals make determinations about where students may be able to fit for open enrollment. We give preference to students who have siblings in that school, and preference to students who are already attending that school and would like to continue in that school. And so one of the reasons a student may already be attending that school that is not their neighborhood school is they may have moved during the middle of the school year, or their neighborhood school was not available for enrollment because it was already at its target enrollment, and therefore they were district open enrolled and placed there by our decision because there was not space at their neighborhood school. And that's an option that isn't written up there that I will add. And then the third way that our students can find their way into our elementary schools through the Magnet Lottery. So we have 3 schools and 1 program by which students have to participate in a lottery in order to attend, and those are Albany School of Humanities, Montessori Magnet School, and Thomas O'Brien Academy for Science and Technology, and then the dual language program at Delaware Community Schools. Families who want to choose for their children to go to those schools must participate in our lottery. We have a main lottery in March, and then we have ongoing lotteries each month until December for any family to be able to participate in from grades pre-K through 5th or 6th grade, depending on the building. The lottery is run with preferences, and so children who have a sibling in the school get first preference. That means the first go-round of seats goes to children who have preferences in those schools. The next go-round of seats goes to students who live in that attendance zone of that school, and that attendance zone is actually a little bit smaller than the traditional attendance zone. It's only 0.5 miles for the magnet schools, whereas it is traditionally 1.5 miles for the neighborhood schools. Families also have the option of, in the final way of going through the lottery is with no preference. You don't have a sibling, you don't live in that neighborhood, and then you go through the lottery without those preferences. Families have the option in the magnet lottery to link their siblings together. And I'll be talking a little bit more about this in May. But the sibling linking option is the ability to have your child either travel as a family through the lottery so that all of your children get placed in the same school, or not get placed in the same school if there is not space available, or to travel as an individual in the lottery to ensure that they are able to get any seat that is available, and then hopefully get your other children in through sibling preference as time goes along. It's probably the simplest way I could explain that. So with all those enrollment options, that is how we end up with a North Albany Academy that is composed of students from many different neighborhood zones across the district. And as a result, have to consider different options for placing those students throughout. And so you can see at North Albany, only a third approximately of the students actually live in the attendance zone for North Albany. The remainder of those students have other neighborhood schools that they can attend. Where it is yellow, we said that there was limited space available, but we would be able to accommodate children in their home school. Where it is red, we would not be able to accommodate all of the students at that grade level in their home school, and we would have to make a different decision about their placement. That's okay. So when we were looking at re-enrollment option 2, we had to look at space available in our neighborhood schools and how we would accommodate the North Albany students who do not have a neighborhood school. And as a result, we know that we could safely fit those students by grade level into each of those schools, just using a reseating process where we replace those 88 students into our existing open spaces in those schools. What is not listed here are seats in our magnet schools, and I couldn't provide that information for you now if I wanted to, because we are in the middle of our magnet lottery, and that will conclude on, registration for those seats will conclude on April 12th. Then we will have an assessment of how many seats are available, and those seats will become open to the public again for application to take those seats. And we currently have families in the waiting pool for those seats as well, so that's important information for you to have. So with the re-enrollment option 2, the North Albany zone students for pre-K through 4 currently at North Albany total about 88 students. They would be offered open enrollment options throughout the district based on space available in a process that we would call the North Albany reseating process. So as not to confuse it with our current traditional open enrollment pathway. And so this is a high-level timeline of what would need to happen between now and June in order for those families to have the appropriate information and placement in their schools. We would need to spend April getting parents and guardians to fill out the reseating application, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next slide. In May, we would be able to use those applications to place those students into available seats that we are predicting based on current enrollment. In May, we would also be able to notify those families of where they would be assigned for school. That would leave families the month of June and all of the summer to make a decision if they wanted to apply for a magnet lottery seat, because those seats would become available. And one of the things that we're committed to is trying to make this as seamless as possible for families, and none of the options presented are we asking families to go back to central registration and re-register their child for a new school. That is something that our central registrar is able to take care of electronically to eliminate that as a barrier. And for the students, approximately 156 students who have neighborhood schools, we would, as a district, spend this month placing those students in our existing neighborhood school space. If they could not be placed in their neighborhood schools, then we would need to have them participate in the reseating process as well, so that they had some choice involved because they are being displaced. And again, in May, parents could be notified so that they are being enrolled. Again, they do not have to go to central registration. That would be done electronically. And again, families could apply for magnet seats, and families could also apply for open enrollment if they still did not want to attend their neighborhood school, our traditional open enrollment. So things that we're considering around this process is basically our current enrollment processes usually limit choices to 2. However, we recognize that there are 8 possible spaces that parents could enroll in. And one of the significant differences is when I apply for open enrollment, I have a backup school. I have my neighborhood school. I have some place to go if I don't get in. We have to be able to definitively tell families where their child will be enrolled in school, and therefore 2 options will not be a viable process for us. And so based on that, we would recommend that either we as a district make decisions for families and say, after your 2 choices, we'll figure out what spaces you're going to put it in, or we commit to giving families choice and having them prioritize all 8 schools. And it really depends on, what camp you fall in. For some people, too many choices is too much, and they'd prefer to. But I think it would be in our best interest to offer all 8 options to families, and that will help us in our process of reseating families. So option 3 takes a look at reseating all of the current North Albany students, which is approximately 256 students, if I'm remembering correctly. And again, we have the open seats available in all of our neighborhood elementary schools to accommodate this. And again, we would not know availability of magnet seats for these families until we close that lottery process, but it will always be an option for those families. And that's what this chart reflects, is that we do have the space available to do that accommodation. 244. So for all current students, again, high-level timeline, this process would be a little bit different. We discussed potentially at the last board meeting what it would look like to use a lottery. And so we would have to create a lottery application and process with our communications department, our current lottery consultant, and then we would wait until May for that process to be completed. And then all families would need to complete the lottery application, and we know we need the support of our community engagement team to ensure that every single family filled out that application so that we could place them appropriately. Preliminarily, our lottery consultant has held the first week of June for us if we were to put this into place, and that's when the lottery would take place, and it would be held at North Albany Academy so families could access it. And then we would use June and July to actually roll those students into their selected schools based on the lottery. Again, those families would not need to come to central registration to claim the seat. And families would still have the option to apply for the magnet lottery throughout this process. For consideration is, as we use a lottery and compare it to our traditional lottery process, what preferences, if any, do we want to give families as they go through this? And so one of the things that we felt was really important is to make an effort to keep families together. Families have chosen to attend North Albany together. We want to make sure they're able to attend their next school together. And so we would actually automatically link every sibling and have those families go through the lottery process first to ensure that we could put everyone together in one school. Then we would move on to sibling preference if by chance they had a sibling in another school, and then neighborhood preference. This would give those neighborhood zone families added preference to go back to their home school. And then we also have the option of putting no preferences and just putting everyone randomly into the lottery. Our recommendation is to go with the sibling linking, keep families together, sibling, and then neighborhood preference. Same considerations as for the other reseating option. We traditionally only offer 4 choices in the magnet lottery, but in this lottery we would recommend offering 8 so that families again could prioritize all 8 of the schools that have open seats available, and the lottery process would continue to run until they were found a seat in one of those 8 schools versus the district just randomly assigning those remaining seats and giving families that choice and voice. So regardless of which plan we go to, we know that we are going to need to do some support around our families as they go through this re-enrollment process. And one of those most significant forms of support would be our community outreach team, which is comprised of our homeschool coordinators in the district who would go out and talk with families and help them understand the process, help them filling out any application forms so that they can make the most informed choice possible. And it would also require us to utilize translators for any languages that our families may need, so that our ENL families are also included and informed throughout that process. Again, if we chose option 3, the support would be to hold that lottery at North Albany Academy. Of course, we would do things at the school to be able to make resources and supports available throughout that lottery registration period. And regardless of the option, we will not create a barrier by having families then have to go and re-register at central registration. So another factor that has come into play is that our pre-K entering pre-kindergartners have registered for, or have put their names in to register for school. And so 13 of our families selected North Albany Academy, and that's because 4 of them have siblings there and 3 of them live in the neighborhood, so it was a school they chose. 6 of them, however, have no preference. And registration for those seats closes on April 12th. And so this is an important factor that I want to raise because, you can just go up to the next one. On April 29th, our practice has been that we make all available pre-K seats open to the public. And so families will be able to come in on April 29th and claim whatever seats remain, and that will limit the seats that are available to our North Albany families who are trying to figure out where their pre-K child is going to go while they still don't know where their elementary student is going to go. And so I think it is paramount that we actually contact these families prior to whatever process that we're going to do and place them so that they were able to keep their pre-K children and their elementary children together, because the options will become very minimal after April 29th, or we're going to end up postponing the entire registration pre-kindergarten process for any other family who is looking to obtain an open seat. So the budget impact for option 2 is less than option 3, because in option 2 we're really only working on having to really connect with families and explain the deeper process of the reseating for 88 students who are going to have to make a choice about which school they're going to. The remaining families will just need communication about the fact they're going to be placed in their neighborhood school. And so that would be, at a high level estimate, approximately $6,000 to activate the community engagement team, and approximately $5,000 for translation services, for a total of $11,000. For re-enrollment option 3, we will need to do another contract with our current lottery consultant at approximately $6,000. Again, high level estimate, he may be able to replicate some of our other pieces and bring that cost down for us. The community engagement team estimate at least doubles, because we are trying to reach actually 3 times as many families potentially, and translation services for that same reason. So the cost total for that is $28,000. The recommendation of the cabinet is to pursue re-enrollment option 2 for these reasons. It would allow the majority of students at North Albany Academy to immediately know where they're going to school next year. It would be a smaller segments of students who are then waiting to find out where they're going to be placed. And then we can communicate with families when necessary, when we are actually assigning the remaining 88 students, and have a more intimate process with them in terms of how they're going to get placed in schools. We can also plan better for the needs of students as we're placing them earlier into those neighborhood schools, and to how we might need to redeploy resources. And families will still have the option to participate in our traditional open enrollment and magnet programs if they do want to still pursue a choice. And thus, there will be less community outreach needed, because we're trying to reach out to fewer families for that placement. And I'll open up for discussion.
Okay, board colleagues, there was a lot of information there at a very high level of detail, which is not typical for us at this level of discussion, but in order to understand this, because it is such a complex thing, we need to understand at a higher level of detail. I'm going to ask you all, as I always do, to try and figure out which is your very most important question, because I suspect we may have to go around more than once. So figure out what's your most important question. You can ask that first, and then if nobody else asks your second question, you can ask that afterwards. Ms. Krejci, I see you have your hand raised.
My question was, I certainly understand in the budget slides why the community engagement team and translation service costs would be double if you're dealing with 250 students rather than 88. But it looked to me that you would still need a lottery even for the 88 students if you're going to have them indicate their choices in all 8 schools and then assign them. If many of them choose the same school, you would still need some sort of equitable method of placing them. So it would seem to me you'd still have a lottery expense.
So you wouldn't, during, using our current open enrollment process, if we were to replicate that for this reseating, we would simply do what we do for that. We would place students into our spreadsheet, and we would line up their choices 1 through 8, and then we would be able to see again, first by sibling linking, how many families are in need of a placement for school, and be able to place those families, and then we would go through and place any student who had a sibling in that school as identified. Then we would go to neighborhood, and so then the only students that we would have to worry about are those students who have none of those preference, and at that point it would just be like pulling from a weight pool, 1 student at a time, to begin to place them into the available seats that are there.
I'm just confused because even in option 2, you might still have 2 students, like let's say 2 4th grade students, neither can go back to Schuyler Achievement Academy because there's not enough space, and they both want to go somewhere, I don't know, they both want to go to Sheridan Prep or something. And how do you decide in that case? I thought that's what that was the reason.
It would just be random. It would just be, we're pulling a name. It wouldn't be a preference. It wouldn't be first come, first served. We wouldn't do any of those pieces. It would just be pulling a name and placing them placing them there.
So I think what Ms. Krejci is asking is, how would you ensure that the pulling of the name was, not somehow a loaded dice? That's one of the reasons we like the lottery, the professional lottery, is that, we know he's got a random number generator built in his computer. We know it's truly random as opposed to being somehow inequitable.
I couldn't. All I could say to you is that we would pull a name. I couldn't say that we would be as autonomous or, as a lottery would be.
Okay, so that's one question. We can go on. Ms. Wilson?
That was what made me like the for option 2, actually, was the fact that it's more of a consultative process with the families, because I think outside of sibling linking, there's other factors that people consider, e.g. their commute to work, proximity to where they live, and things. So you're going to be interfacing with them, where I realize there may be the perception that somehow this lottery adds like a blind factor to it, but I think the more consultative process is why I lean towards 2 in your description also.
Ms. Smith?
So, Ms. Krejci, I think that was a great question, and I also would agree with Ms. Wilson's response to that. I think, and I don't have a question, my biggest concern was the timing of when families would know, and I just don't think June is going to work. I think they need to know as soon as possible, and for the pre-K families as well. So that kind of sealed the deal for me.
Ms. Lang?
Can we go back to the pre-K screen? I'm a little confused. So the 13 they were able to select North Albany as a pre-K during their pre-K just a month ago.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess that's my...
Because we could not.
The school was still in existence until possibly, we did not know at that time. Dr. Cho, do you have a question at this point?
I have a question, but I mean, I agree with Ms. Smith that the sooner we can notify the families, they can make whatever plans they need to do with their own lives. And so, option 2 gives them that extra time to readjust, reevaluate, waiting till last minute. So I like the fact that it's giving them that extra time.
Ms. Alexander-Mann? You can say you can say nothing yet. That's fine. Okay. I actually would like to blend the comments of Ms. Wilson and Ms. Krejci. I definitely like the consultative approach. I think I see that actually in both option 2 or option 3. I think that what that is the paying for the community engagement team to go out and talk to every possible person and consult with them and help them understand how the lottery works. So I see that consultative approach in both. I am concerned because we have especially in those red blocks and some of those yellow blocks, not every child is going to get the seat that they choose as their first preference. And I would like to have some certainty around the fact that we did our very best to make sure that was truly a completely random process. So if that means a lottery, then that means a lottery. If there's some other solution to do that, there could be another solution. But I absolutely concur that the management of the filing of the form is going to be a very high touch experience, which brings me to my question, which is, as you know, I have gotten way too many phone calls over the years about the sibling linking situation, and I'm wondering if you had a rationale behind not providing an opportunity to families to opt out of sibling linking.
Because they will not have a guaranteed homeschool like they do when they're going through the lottery process, to wait for a seat to open up for their family to be together. And that's really that's my reasoning for saying that I would automatically link every family, so that every family has a homeschool to go to together as a family, as they currently are.
I guess I once again believe that that's their choice to make. They may choose, I would rather have one child at Pine Hills and the other child at Sheridan Prep rather than have both children at Eagle Point. I want one of my kids in my school that's nearby. And I guess my preference is to let the families make that choice and not make that for them. I do understand your position, and I do think it makes perfectly logical sense to say the sort of default position is that we're going to link, but I would prefer to see an option for families to say, I hear what you're saying, but I want my kid to go to whatever kid. I want my kid to have as many choices as possible. That would be my position.
And I would just say to those families, they would still have the option of selecting open enrollment to do that. So if there was another school that they would have preferred to attend, they could still go through that process.
And I'm just saying there won't be many open enrollment
Correct.
seats at the end of the day. So if we're trying to give the North Albany families as much preference as we can, maybe I just don't see this the way other people see it, but from my perspective, giving them the opportunity to opt out of sibling linking gives them the highest chance of getting what they want, which may not be what I would want as a parent of my two children together, but what they choose is to have their child at whatever school it is that they want. Okay, so I think that makes us one, except Ms. Alexander-Mann. Do you have anything at this point? Okay, then let's go on to two. Ms. Smith.
So just to follow up to Ms. Savage's question, and maybe this is just unique to North Albany, so pardon my question. Normally, sibling linking, is it more common or less common? I mean, do you see a pattern where parents want to separate their children?
So
and put them-
in the magnet lottery process, to be very honest, parents don't often understand what it means because there are so many layers to that lottery process. And I know we ran the numbers in the lottery process. It's, which families opted to link or how many families would be linked. And so I could get you that number. But it really varied. And we had a lot of calls about it again this year about whether, what are the benefits of doing it? Why wouldn't I do it? What happens if I don't do it? But I could get you that data.
I mean, and I would just ask the board if you think that that's important information. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to hear your point, and I know that for me it would be might be a different decision, but I can't speak for other families, but I wanted to kind of get a sense of how common that is. And again, I don't know if there's a way to. My only concern is about the timing of all of this because. I just think June is way too late, but anyway, okay.
Ms. Krejci.
That's the one thing that gives me pause, the date, that although I really think option 3 gives the families more autonomy in the decision, and I think it's the lottery element really makes it clear that it's impartial, I am concerned about the timing. I think the advantage to option 2, besides the lower cost, if a lottery is deemed not necessary for that option, is that it does give people the certainty of where they're going to go sooner. So I see the benefits of either.
Anyone else with a second comment or question? Ms. Alexander-Mann. Microphone, my friend.
Is there any way that the timeline for the decision-making in option 3, is there any way that can be pushed up?
So in my discussion with the lottery consultant, that's what I based it on, was the soonest he had available to do that work. He may have been able to go a week earlier, but we're going to be on Memorial Day extended vacation that week. And we are going to need a serious amount of time if we're going to get to 244 families in an effective manner so that they understand what they're filling out and submitting. And that's a shorter window than we use for our lottery process right now.
Anyone else have another comment?
I would agree with Vicki, and just I think that the time is too late, especially with all of the other lotteries that have already passed. So I think the families are going to be saying the first magnet lottery passed, the first pre-K lottery passed, this opportunity passed, and now we're at the end, basically where everyone else has gotten their first choice. And we have been talking about this for months as a board. We understand it hasn't been a decision, but we've already gone through one lottery now. Now we're on the second round for these families. So I think we might, I'd like to suggest or talk about possibly pushing that up.
So I'm going to add that I completely concur around the timing. And so I'm going to propose that we look more carefully at option 2, but somehow vary that last decision. I mean, there aren't going to be many places where these things hit. And we should not, when I say these things, where there are more children who are similarly situated, who want the same seat, that's only going to happen in a handful of cases. And I'm going to suppose that handful of cases is going to be some number less than 20 students, right? There's going to be less than 20 students who are in 4th grade, who want the same school, who are similarly situated. Well, we can go to the store and buy a 20-sided die and run our own lottery. You know, we can do that very simply to randomize that decision. We can set up, hey Siri, random number between 1 and 20, right? There are a lot of ways we can randomize that. I guess I would say that when we get to that point, I think all of this is going to happen in the input of the information and the looking at the preferences is going to happen in private, right? That's going to happen with 2 people sitting around a desk looking and making sure the information gets set up. But when we get to those collisions, I think that perhaps there needs to be a public aspect to it so that people can really know, here's what happened and here's why it happened. And that will, I think, address the concerns about having a truly random process without pushing the timing back, because I definitely concur that we want this timing as soon as humanly possible. Anybody else have a comment or a question or thought they want to say? So what I'm hearing is option 2. We've talked about this. This is our 3rd board meeting on this. There's been plenty of opportunity for public comment. We have not received a lot of public comment on this, but nonetheless, there's been opportunity. Do we feel ready tonight to make a vote, to vote on re-enrollment option 2? The advantage of voting tonight is that they can get started, and then they can move faster. Okay. I would like to entertain a motion for selecting re-enrollment option 2 with some sort of formally randomized decision-making integrated into it. Do I have a motion? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Smith. Any discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Wilson. Thank you.
I apologize. I want to just push back that Ellen's point was a pinpoint observation that we do want to eliminate any perceived bias, because I don't want people to, like the suggestion that, oh, I knew someone XYZ place, but that was it.
Okay, so I believe all in favor. Let's do that again. All in favor? That is unanimous. Is there any decision-making you need us to make on the last bit of the pre-K?
I need the okay to seat them before other families.
The only other option would be to push back the date for everybody else and therefore slow down the entire district to get those 7 June soon seated. Okay. All in favor of that specific change? Ms. Smith, did you have a comment? Or okay. Let's have a motion. Wait, I forgot about the motion part. I would like to make a motion to adopt, as part of option 2, a preference for families that have entering pre-kindergarten students, right, that are currently expecting to attend North Albany Academy in the fall for pre-K. Do I have a motion? Ms. Smith, seconded by Dr. Chator. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much for all of your extremely hard work and all of the hard work that is to come on this, because this is going to be a major, major thing. And I very much appreciate the student-centered way you've looked at this all throughout this entire process. It's been very clear that none of us want our families to be facing this, but now that they are, we're trying to do this with as much TLC as can be mustered in this situation. Ms. Smith.
Yeah, and just again, not that we didn't expect you to do this, but the community engagement pieces, just want to echo other sentiments that's so important. And I think this also gives us not just an opportunity for this set of families to have a better understanding of lottery and choices, et cetera, but perhaps this will be something we'll be utilizing in an improvement kind of way down the road for future lotteries. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to turn now briefly to the policy section of our agenda. I thought we had forgotten, but it's just slightly out of order from our normal. Dr. Chator.
Thank you, President Savage, members of the board. We have two action items today on two policies that we discussed last time. The first one is 4311.1, which is display of the flag, and 6255, which is donation, gifts, and grants from the public. Are there any questions on those?
Should we take a motion on the flag? Can I have a motion to adopt the amended 4311.1 display of the flag? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Krejci. All in favor? That is Ms. Krejci, Ms. Savage, Ms. Lang, Dr. Chator, Ms. Wilson, and Ms. Alexander Mann. Ms. Smith has stepped out for a moment, so she is a no vote on that policy.
And 6255, do you want to?
Any discussion on 6255? This is gifts and grants. And for clarification for members of the audience, we had a pretty robust discussion on both of these 2 weeks ago. All in favor of adopting 6255 as proposed? Ms. Krejci, seconded by Ms. Alexander Mann. All in favor? Again, that's Ms. Krejci, Ms. Savage, Ms. Lang, Dr. Chator, Ms. Wilson, and Ms. Alexander Mann. Ms. Smith has stepped out.
But she just walked in, so. She raising her hand?
She raised her hand. Ms. Smith has voted in favor of adopting 6255 as amended.
The third item on our agenda is a discussion item, policy 9520.2, which is family and medical leave. So this policy replaces the current policy 9600 that we already have on the books. Again, going back to what we've been doing, trying to take our numbers and match what NISBA has on their policy numbers. We're getting rid of 9600 and replacing it with 9520.2. This policy relates to the leave available to families under the FMLA Act, the Family and Medical Leave Act. So there are very minimal changes. The biggest change is the policy number. Any questions?
Questions or comments, Family and Medical Leave Act? Okay, that brings us to the end of our policy section and on to our next item, which is as part of our series on focusing on our elementary school special programs. We are going to talk tonight about the Albany School of Humanities.
Good evening. This is the number 4 in our series of our special programs for the elementary schools. And we have with us this evening our principal for the Albany School of Humanities, Ms. Marie Cullihan. We're very excited to have Marie join us in the City School District of Albany, I should say again, because she did her student teaching here, but has done an incredible job over the last year and a half of balancing the reintegration of theme into Albany School of Humanities while still staying focused on the very important school improvement work that has resulted in them being a school in good standing. And so I look forward to her sharing the information this evening on the Albany School of Humanities. Thank you. Nope, my husband found it, so I'm good.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. So I'm just going to walk us through. There you go. So the first part here that most of us all know by now is that we're a pre-K through grade 6 magnet school. And I just got to flip my sheet because I promised myself I would not read just from my PowerPoint. integrating the arts, literacy across all areas into our school day. We are a school that has the fortunate ability to have a full-time art teacher and a full-time librarian, and we also have music, PE, computer, and a .4 theater arts teacher. And we take full advantage of having all of those opportunities. When our art teacher or our librarian has like a free block in their schedule this year, we push them into the classrooms to provide literacy support right inside the classroom instead of that pull-out support that we were utilizing in the past. We also have a lot of school-wide events, literacy night, STEAM night, multicultural night, that's coming up next Thursday. And we do a lot of field trips and in-house assemblies that are tied to the arts, literacy, and cultural awareness monthly. You'll see on the future slide that we've tried to really ensure this year that every grade level, pre-K through 6, has at least a field trip in the fall and a field trip in the spring, and that they have at least 2 community partnerships throughout the school year. And the next part I just wanted to show you is an example of a theater arts teacher and working with our community partners of the Youth FX. It's a video that we have, and it's kind of long, so we're just going to show like 2-minute snippet of it for you guys. And if you want to press play, the password is ASH2018. Oh, this is Miss Irwin, my assistant principal. It was working. Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Caps lock is on.
Black History Month is important to me because it's a time to honor people who deserve to be honored and who had struggles through life but still made it.
Black History Month represents all the things Black people have done in the past and present.
It's important to me because I had such important role models that have been teaching me about our life.
It shows that no matter what color you are or anything, you can still become great and accomplish your goals.
All through history, there's been like bad things like all around about race, especially African Americans. So it's good to like have a month in the year where African Americans get to be honored.
Black History Month is about everything Black people did in the past that like changes now, like Rosa Parks and the bus thing. Because if it wasn't for her, then like the thing would still probably be the same.
I think it's important because if you think about it, you wouldn't have like the friends you have now. Because like if you're like white and someone else is black, you guys wouldn't be friends. It just wouldn't happen.
For Black History Month, I would like to honor my uncle because he always has this good spirit and always makes me laugh.
And my mom, my dad, and my grandma, because they always help me like go through a lot of things, and like they're always there for me when I'm crying or being happy and stuff.
I would like to honor my dad and my grandpa.
They have shown me the importance of being black and the honor of being black, and to know like what our ancestors went through so that we could be here today.
What I think is amazing about my mom is she takes care of me. She puts a roof over my head. She like makes me feel happy and proud and comfortable. I'd like to.
So that is our Black History Month performance, and it goes on for about 10 to 12 minutes. So I uploaded the whole thing into the PowerPoint so that you could review and see the whole thing. And so the only other thing that I want to talk about from this slide is that we're fortunate to have a lot of the color guard and percussions and a lot of those events at our school. This year we get to host NYSSMA at Albany School of Humanities, and we also get to have the director of all of these great programs works for ASH, so I think a lot of our kids get that opportunity from a young age. And you'll see right from pre-K through 12th grade, those same kids in all of those marching band, color guard, and those opportunities as well. So this is just a program overview of our enrollment. So currently, as of last week, we have 553 students in pre-K through 6. And it's broken down for you just all the way across. And you can see that we're pretty much 51% female, 49% male. It's pretty even spread. 310 of our students are in poverty, which is about 80% of our population. And we do have 21 ENL students right now currently in our building. There are 3 sections of each in our school too, so pre-K 3 section all the way up through 6th grade. The next one is just our program goals at ASH, and we went over these at our SEP review too, but our ASH goals are to increase student achievement, and that's what Dr. Wilson Turner said in the beginning, that we've really took a focus on increasing the student achievement at ASH while also integrating the magnet theme to help students develop their social emotional skills, and we've been doing that a lot with our sensory room and mindful moments and literacy nooks in different areas of the building to have relaxed and like really focus on their social emotional needs, increasing our partnership with our families, and increasing our partnerships with outside community people. So this was the chart I was talking about in the beginning, where we're just trying to make sure it's equitable across all grade levels. Last year, I felt like I was signing off on field trip request forms after reviewing them, and then I was like, wait, why is 4th grade going on 3 field trips? We need to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be going on field trips. So we've really focused on making sure that kindergarten through 6th has something in the fall and something in the spring. And now, the past couple weeks, we've ensured that pre-K gets to go on a field trip too in the spring. So they're very excited about that. And the right side there, we'll just go over the community partnerships that we've had a lot with Puppets in Education, Saratoga Opera, Albany Symphony, Albany Institute of Arts and Humanity, Albany Institute of Arts, the St. Rose, and Youth FX. And we've done some stuff in our 5th and 6th grade with Flying Classroom this year. And we have also had opportunities with the SUNY Fraternity Brothers for our 6th grade students. So these are some initiatives that we worked on this year, and if you follow us on Twitter, you would see that today our school got covered with all of the book covers that we have done so far in our hallways this year. So when you walk in, you will see I Am Peace book cover, Charlotte's Web, Flora and Ulysses on our school walls to celebrate the literature that our kids have been reading. We have those reading nooks throughout the building. We have a sensory room that we've created. We talked about our nights already. This year we have up to 12 therapy dogs in our school. They keep me nice and calm all day. And we are very fortunate that we started drama and art therapy group this year. And that was we saw that our art teacher had a couple extra blocks at the same time that Noel Gentile had a couple extra blocks. So they are pooling some kids from 4th, 5th, and 6th grade that need that extra support for a small social emotional group that integrates art and therapy together in the art room. And so I have another video that's also long, but I'm just going to show you a minute of it so that you can see something that they were working on. And that one's 2019, if you need it. So this was the book that every kid in the school got in September to start their year off, and it's I Am Peace. And so then these students created an I Am Peace video that went along with the book that all of our students got to see. And the author from the I Am Peace book asked us if she could use it on her website now. So you'll see it on the author's website. It's our students.
peace. I am peace. I am peace. Let there be peace on earth like there was meant to be. I am peace. We are peace. We are peace. I am peace. We are peace.
And so then the video is on and does that with every class. I don't know how to get back out of here, I'm sorry. I know. Okay, you got it. And so the password for that one is 2019. If you wanted to see it all, I made sure that it was all up there for you. So the next one is just our strengths and highlighting again, we've grown in New York State ELA and Math State assessment scores in 17-18. We have really had staff collaboration around our magnet theme this year. We have a magnet coordinator, Miss Adams. She's a second grade teacher, and we meet once a month after school. And then we have a running Google Doc where we keep track of what projects we have, and the teachers have really taken on a lot of that themselves this year. We've increased our community partnerships related to art and literature, and we've really maximized our human resources to allow for creative scheduling and opportunities for cross-curricular planning, both vertically and horizontally. So ongoing, what we need next to work on is ongoing professional development on integrating the arts and humanities into cross-curricular units, increasing more community partnerships involving dance and theater. So I've spent some time talking to Miss Wright, Kate Wright, about the opportunities of getting volunteer dance programs into our schools and really maximizing that space. And a renewed focus on tying together the ASH's mission, vision, and magnet theme. So I feel like we're at a good point where we have a strong mission and vision as a building, but then we also have our magnet theme. And so we really need to spend time this summer integrating both of them together. So this is just a review of our data that I think you've seen at the last probably 2 or 3 presentations, but this one just especially highlights ASH. And as you can see, we have made some growth the last couple of years, especially if you look down at our math and ELA New York State test scores. And we're making more growth in the NWA math than we are in reading, which I'm hoping those scores will change this year so that we're at 47.2 or higher with our push and support happening inside the classrooms. So my recommendations, which I talked about a minute ago, are the professional development for staff around integrating the themes, working with the fine arts supervisor to find dance programs so we can expand and the use of that room and opportunities for our kid, and increasing our community partnerships. And so here's our budget impact. We wanted to work on some humanities curriculum work this summer, looking at some of the other magnet schools in the district. We really liked what Toast had done and started with like 1 grade level. And so we're hoping to really start building units this summer where we pick 1 grade level and put all of our support and then keep building up from there year after year. So we would need some summer work days and professional development and arts and education field trip money. We were very fortunate for the last 10 years to have TLQP money. And so last year was just my first year at ASH, but I used all of that $20,000 for magnet-related activities. And then this year, I didn't have that. So I'm a little nervous about next year, moving on that we're not a focus school, very happy about it, but then it's more money that I use for magnet theme activities this year. So we really want some arts and education field trip money. And that's it.
Thank you very much for the excellent presentation and a
Thank
little
you.
window into ASH. As always, we're going to do one question at a time or one comment. So who would like to go first? Ms. Alexander Mann.
So this is just a comment, the principal. I am the proud board liaison for ASH. And I had a real lovely tour back when? December, November, anyway, a few months back, and it was really beautiful. And I just want to comment that the school, when you walk in, it's there are over 500 students in the school, and it was calm and it felt very safe, and it was quite beautiful. So, and I love the book. Suzanne Verde is wonderful, so that's fantastic. I appreciate your commitment to the students of the district. Thank you.
Who would like to be next? Ms. Lang.
I really like how you talked about the field trips, and you mentioned Toast with the way that they're kind of moving forward, but they also did really tie their field trips into STEM activity field trips. So I did want to appreciate that you acknowledged that and saying that was something that you wanted to move towards. And then I have a quick question. Are we doing a theater program, a school-wide theater production over the years, or how does that work?
Yep. So they do it every other year. So we had one last year, so we have one next year, and Miss Baguki promised that she'll come back and do it. So she came back this week for Jump Rope for Heart, and we were talking about some ideas for next year.
Dr. Jator.
Great presentation. Every time I've been at ASH, usually, most of the times it's been when board meetings with ASH, and you see lots of happy children, music. And this is what we want our magnet to be. It's a magnet for arts and humanities, and that's what the kids are doing. They're happy, makes me happy. And also on Facebook, I mean, with the city posting all the school district posting all the wonderful things happening in all our schools. ASH especially has things on STEM, arts, you name it. I mean, there's so many things happening. I saw the picture with the dogs. Yeah, I mean, just looking at that picture made me happy. So keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Creighton.
Thank you for the presentation. I did learn a lot about the school, and yes, as Dr. Shore mentioned, I knew some of the things about your school through your excellent communications program. It's really easy to feel like you're part of a school community when the school is really reaching out. I remember the post you made about the Siena basketball game, really praising the students for their behavior and praising Siena for coordinating. It was really great to have to model that kind of interaction. So thank you so much.
Ms. Smith.
Again, thank you very much for the presentation, and I am a proud parent of a graduate of ASH, and we had a lot of fun years there, and particularly the theater piece was, Ms. Baguki is just primo. And there are lots of great things. I don't, what I'm going to ask you, I don't want to take away from the fact that there's a great deal going on there, and a great deal of successful things, a great deal of engagement kinds of things. The one thing that I have to say is I kept wanting to figure out, and I know it's in here, but it just wasn't clearly connecting with me, is what is the connection to student improvement? Because you've got 3 years, I mean, it's okay, but it's not great. And I'm just sort of wondering, and I know you're new coming, into this, but just kind of wanting to have a better sense of, is PD the predominant thing? I mean, what's missing here? And how can we better support the school so that you can better meet the goals? Particularly around student achievement, because you've got a lot of other things that seem to be working with parent engagement, student engagement, those kinds of things. So if you could just help me a little bit. And I will say that it did help me to remember that as I was reading the piece about ASH, that I also had to look back at our budget, because I saw the supplies there for the magnet schools, because I was trying to connect all of these curricular things and things that you deem important to move the needle, but it just wasn't quite grabbing me. Can you help me there? Okay.
So I think one thing that I noticed coming in or after spending the first month or so at the building was a lot with scheduling. And I just, there might not have been that set ELA block and math block that we are really pushing for in the district. But I think it was because we were focusing so much on making sure that our kids had all of the magnet theme experience, but by going to author visits, and there was no connection between the two. So what we did this summer is really took time to make sure that kids were maximizing instructional time, that they had those blocks of times where they were not being removed for these events. But then the other part of the day was for that magnet block. And that's where we saw the increase with the 5% in math and the 10 or 11% in ELA. And so that I'm hoping strongly that after this year, where we made even more changes now to that schedule, that we'll see even more of an impact. Instead of looking at everything separately, we're trying really hard to blend it together so that the focus is on instruction, but through a magnet lens. And so how can we make sure that our kids have rigorous material using arts and music and theater instead of always separating the two? And so I think we will see a lot of growth this year. I'm hoping that we see growth.
When we brought the magnet schools together, I think even the year before Marie came here, that separation was very evident, right? So even in TOAST, which now has a process that they're building upon, TOAST and ASH were experiencing something very similar, and we talked about this when Montessori presented. Montessori is a way of teaching, and so it's integrated into what they're doing. And what happened over time with TOAST and the Albany School of Humanities, the focus became on pass the test, pass the test, pass the test, versus how are we using humanities and STEM to engage students in a way that would allow them to learn more deeply and more successfully and see things be connected over time, as opposed to seeing it, I'm going to do my reading or ELA over here, and then I'm going to do my theater arts with Miss Gentile. How do we get teachers to use the strategies that Miss Gentile is using in her theater class to engage students as they look through the literature and engage with a text in a meaningful way? And I give Ms. Cullihan a lot of credit, because when she came into that role, being able to see both the need for school improvement and the need for that theme integration and how you balance that in a very narrowly focused way to keep the building moving forward seemed to have immediate impact. And thus the buy-in that she's getting from the staff to really take on this integration work themselves, to get it to a level where they're doing that curriculum integration work at each grade level, and we're really working at the elementary level at taking small bites at the apple so that we can build instead of trying to get the entire building into one place at a time. But if they can get to that level of work that TOAST just started a year ago, integrating that curriculum, that lens, the expertise of their, their art, music, and theater teacher into the work, and really partnering with teachers in there's a model we used to use at the high school, I can't think of the name, but you're really side by side showing them how to use those strategies. And then being able to see that impact and balance that with the really strong data work that Ms. Cullihan has them do throughout that process, and not seeing them as two separate things.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you so much. I thought your presentation was brilliant, and I appreciate everything that you're doing, as well as I feel like the universe must have been aligned or something, because there was an article that came out that talked about how music, theater, dance boosts scores, and then naturally we had this board presentation and you were here. So I just feel like the work that you're aligning with and your goals really do play to those strengths, and we thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith.
Okay, so and I just again I want to come back to, and this is not really, do you know what I'm going to? This is not about ASH, but I think I'm really, each one of our schools, what I want to do, like, okay, it is incredible the things that you all are doing in our schools, and what our students are exposed to, and I don't want to take away from that at all. But what I want to try to make sure that I get a sense of is what we are doing differently, instructionally, and I can hear that as you're sort of talking and responding to my question, because if I just simply go on what you've written here, then and that includes the presentation, but also the sort of final overview, like I just see fun, and that's great, but I got to tie it to how are we going to move the needle? And I also want to say, sometimes you can do too much. You can have too much, and you've already talked about that a little bit on your plate. So I think it's sort of honing in on those things that you can do well, that you can see the results of, and so forth. The only other thing I would add here is that with the dance piece, which I love, I mean, who isn't crazy about that, right? I just hate to see it be volunteer, all right, piece. I would rather see it be a substantial component compared to all the other, the theater and the music in the school. And so, I would also say, don't be afraid to ask for that. Now, it might not be this year or next year, but please ask for that. Okay, all righty. So, okay, and so again, maybe I'm just, I think this is you've presented at a high level, and maybe I'm just trying to get in on making sure I understand what's happening in your school, every school, that's sort of pushing and driving that instruction to be absolutely on point, terrific, parents engaged, kids engaged, 100% all in. I just want to, I want to get there. So I'm hoping that you have a tremendous year this year, improving, seeing that 5% increase to 10%, 15%, et cetera. So I'm with you. Okay, all right, thank you.
Madam President, if I may.
Please.
So, Madam President, members of the board, and also Vice President Smith, what I'd like to just kind of emphasize, having had the privilege of walking the campus and going into classrooms and being at ASH up close and personal, a couple of things that I will highlight in terms of getting to that, moving the needle and what's different. When we talk about the targeted professional development, when our administrators are able to go in and work alongside teachers, and also our instructional supervisors are in working with teachers to move that needle, it really is about that observation cycle, that observation feedback cycle. And so when that professional development is provided, when we say enrichment or we say student engagement or differentiation, what would be different at ASH that I've even seen over the past year and a half is that when you look at how art, music, the humanities are taught in those classes, those strategies, as Dr. Wilson Turner said, how are we bringing those strategies into our daily lives? Which is much like what happens at Toast when you look at how are the classrooms different from, say, a year and a half ago with regard to the focus being STEM and looking at project-based learning. And so that difference becomes that targeted professional development unique to what the teachers need, and then making sure that our administrators have the time to go into classrooms to provide that actionable feedback, and then it becomes more of a coaching cycle with our instructional supervisors and our coaches working alongside our teachers.
Ms. Lang, did you have something?
I appreciate that, and I wanted to follow up a little bit on Ms. Smith's. I too kind of had a hard time pulling out the art and how this kind of worked in with the curriculum of everyday life. So I think that this presentation was great. I have a couple questions on the dance thing. I agree that I didn't really. I understand the volunteer, but I did. We have a .4 theater. Maybe it's a full-time dance theater. And also, does the gym teacher incorporate dance? Is that something that they do, and so, can even enhance those roles on all of the aspects of that? And also, do you still do yoga? I had heard there was yoga at ASH, but I didn't see it in the presentation, so just...
We have not been doing yoga here at ASH since I've been here, and I'm not sure if it was happening before. We do a lot of mindful moments, so we have 2 a day, and it's school-wide at 8:15 and 2, and we're actually just looking to move the one back to 2:15 because some of the feedback that we've gotten from teachers now that they are maximizing instructional time is like they want to the very last second of the day, so let's do that mindful moment before they get to go on the school bus home. So we do that, and we have our sensory room now that a lot of our students have been taking advantage of, and now they're going to sensory spots in the classroom as well. So a lot of our teachers have been making like a cozy corner right inside of the classroom.
So I'm just going to add that the stars are aligning a little bit for me because in the last 3 days I've had 3 members of the community reach out looking for ways to connect with the City School District of Albany. One is a person who does community dancing, not fine arts dancing, but folk dancing. One is a person who manages a gallery that's less than a mile from Ash. And the third is also an art person. So I will provide all that information to Dr. Wilson Turner, and then you can see if it's something that can be folded into what you are looking to do next year. And with that, I would like to thank you for your presentation and make eye contact with all my board colleagues. Are we good? All right. Thank you so much for your. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Krejci.
I don't think you got to the part about the physical education and dance, whether that's integrated at all.
Yes, so our PE teachers do units on dance during their PE time.
I think that's done in all elementaries.
I think it is part of the elementary
It's part of the
now,
curriculum.
but-
I don't know if they're doing more at Ash, which would be nice to hear about, but I do hear that there's dance in other elementaries. Anything else? Yes, Ms. Smith. We are, however, just to be clear, we are at the exact minute of time that we allocated.
No, I wanted to, could you just talk a little bit about, so you have a full-time librarian, right? So, and that may not be the case in all of our schools, right? So tell me what's unique about it, because you, in the presentation, you made a point, or in the written presentation, you made a point of saying how unique it was to have the librarian, the theater person, I think, but I really was interested in this librarian piece, if you would.
So we are fortunate at Ash to have a full-time librarian. And so when I looked at her schedule first coming in, there was some open blocks of time. So my question was like, oh, what do we do during that time? And so it said magnet. And so then I was like, well, what does that look like? And so what we changed it to this year is it's still called Magnet Lit, but it's for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And so they each get her for 60 minutes a day of push and support, where they go to, so 5th grade is 9 to 9:40, and she goes into the classroom when they're doing their ELA block, and she takes a small group to the table while the other teachers are working with small groups. So we're really maximizing that instructional block.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to our priority activities update. This is a new item on our agenda for those of you who have come to board meetings over the years. We have worked this year as part of our orientation at the beginning or at the end of last year, moving into this year, to identify a set of priority activities to be implemented over the course of the year. And this is the first of a series of, I think, 3 reports on how we're doing on implementing those priority activities.
Good evening, and thank you very much. We are so very excited, Madam President, members of the board. Last year, we started our 3-part update over priority objectives and just kind of grouping them together so that we could look at a very high level, some of the progress that we're making in some of the areas that we know we really needed to work on and look at restructuring to some extent. So last year, we talked about our human resources division, building our community partners, and instructional focus. And when we look at our vision and our mission and our goals, we know that we have to have the right people in the right seats and on the right bus with regard to human resources so that we can have a district of excellence with our caring relationships and engaging learning experiences. And one of the core elements of that is our human resources division. So tonight, that is going to be our focus, but I'd like to just take you back to our 5 goals and then looking at what some of our priorities were within those 5 goals that were established at our August 2018 board retreat with Cabinet. And so when you look at student achievement, we were talking about developing and enhancing our social and emotional supports We talked about the academic pieces, which you've heard throughout the year. We've done some work with our IB program and enhancing that. You received the STEM report a few months ago so that you could see those enhancements that we are doing with regard to the curriculum and project-based learning, and also looking at how we are addressing our high school and middle school facility needs. And that presentation, we have talked about that through our 5-year plan, and also with the middle school, the transformation of North Albany to our third 650-seat middle school. Our second goal of delivering quality instruction, we look at our culturally responsive education practices, and you've had reports from that piece where we have Vibetta Sanders, who is our principal on special assignment, who's working with the CRE component, as well as we have our equity policy, and we are moving forward with how that policy is being communicated throughout the organization. Those updates will be ongoing, but we know that that work is in place. And also we've talked about our workforce diversity, and so later on in this presentation, Mr. Petrin, who is the director of our Human Resources Division, will share with you what we've been doing in HR with regard to how we are growing our own, and then the steps that we've put in place to look at increasing diversity. Our third goal, which looks at building our leadership capacity, we have had several presentations, and you know that it's been in our social media with regard to the opportunities for our teachers, where they have been able to participate in going to the Adirondack, also going to Florida, and working with project-based learning, where they're building those models, those modules for our students to engage in themselves. We've also looked at our leadership capacity with regard to sending our principals and assistant principals to the National Principals Leadership Institute. You've received reports on that. Empowering our families, we are working, this is an ongoing, as all of them are ongoing efforts, but looking at ways that we can improve our customer service as an organization, building those relationships with our families, building those relationships beyond the school walls so that parents feel more welcomed at our campuses. We are still working in this area, as we will always be working on improving relationships with our community and with our families. Also providing our families with strategies that they may use to assist their children at home that help to support the curriculum each and every day. And our fifth goal, in partnering with our diverse community, you heard from Ash, the different community partners that are here. We know that our board members are active in the community and bringing those community members to the table to work side by side with our schools. And so we are always looking at ways to enhance community support with our students. So at this time, transitioning to our Human Resources Division, last year there were 4 categories that we looked at, and this year we are going to look at those same categories in terms of things that we have put in place and looking at our initial movement toward what those metrics are that we will be measuring from year to year through our HR department. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Petrin.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. As the superintendent highlighted, we have consistent updates because I like to be consistent. We have the same objectives and high-level updates we want to provide, but the other opportunity this gives us is the ability to go deeper in those areas. So that's kind of why I enjoy having those items there. But I like to cover also some of the milestones that we hit in the HR department as a team, some that have passed and some that are coming up. We're on cycle again. This is peak recruiting season, so we're about where we were last year when I presented this information. We started the year off with a bang with our CSTA job fair that we held this spring. The superintendent reviewed those results before. That really set us up for hitting the ground running this year. We've received a lot of our annual retirements at this point, gives us a projection of where we're going for the year, and we are right in the middle, actually just about wrapping up summer school, which is another big initiative for my department. Once we're done with that, we're right into 2019-2020 hiring season. We are actually have been to about 3 job fairs at this point, and we have many more on the horizon. It seems like every time I turn around, we are repackaging our recruitment to go bag and getting out there and getting some candidates through the door. I think the last piece is really the process improvements, and I'll touch on that later. But as I mentioned, we have been hitting a few job fairs. Typically, we like to hit about 4 to 6 each year, try to hit 1 or 2 in the fall, and then obviously in the spring, that's where we spend most of our time. We find some good success on the fairs that we have listed up there. We usually try to get a teacher administrator group and also some support staff, just to make sure that we're getting candidates for both areas. The new piece that we're adding, which we started last year, is visiting some further away career fairs, trying to see if we can tap into the historically black colleges and universities, see if we can diversify our recruitment pools and also attract other candidates to the capital region. Some of that, with a brief expansion last year, we went to 2 schools. This year we're up to 3, and we've also added some other local fairs that we want to go to kind of get a different reach. What we found is, and we knew this going into our historically black college visits, you need to repeat the pattern. So we went once last year. We need to go again and make a name for ourselves. We are also going to another new fair. So we're not going 6 different fairs, 8 different places and seeing what works. We're trying a couple targeted fairs and repeating them year after year to see what sort of results we get. One thing I wanted to try this year, yes, it's great if we go south and try to recruit candidates from Atlanta or down in the southern U.S., but they may not want to come to Albany. So what we are trying is we are going to a couple diversity fairs, one out in Boston and one down in New York City. Those individuals probably are familiar with the Northeast, and it kind of broadens our reach and allows us to entice them to come north here. So we'll see what those fairs are, and those are the 2 listed at the bottom. One thing that I stress with the team is we can't do recruiting on our own. So we have developed some recruiting cohorts, and one of our volunteers actually was here earlier this evening, but we put out a call to staff, and we had a bunch of hands go up. So we have some teachers, we have some administrators and support staff who are like, yes, I want to go out, I want to recruit for the district, talk about all the great things we're doing. That's wonderful. That multiplies my staff by 2 times, 3 times, and we just package them up with talking points, and they go out and shake some hands and meet some candidates. So that's been really helpful, and I thank all of those people that have volunteered. I have a small smattering on the screen, but we still have even more out there. Next, the superintendent also referenced the culturally responsive education collaboration. So we too are wading into this pool. We're partnering with Dr. Wilson Turner and Principal Sanders on the culturally responsive educational efforts. We started last year with our targeted recruiting in diverse magazines and trying to really take a high need position, spend a little extra money on it, see if we can't get some other candidates for those positions. We're also talking about, so that's the direct things, obviously, going out, putting an advertisement out, saying, here, come work for us. The indirect thing was what we're working on related to marketing materials, if you will. So we developed our recruiting packet last year. One thing we identified is, wouldn't it be great if we had a resource guide in there for people that are new to the Albany area? Where do I go for housing? Where do I go for places of worship? Things like that. So we are developing those partnerships in the communities as well as listings of appropriate places where people can connect and get what they need. So we're really starting to pull all that information together, and we'll have that as an insert in our recruitment folder. The last important thing that I think I should talk about is really HR diving deeper into the metrics game. We talk about wanting to see our progress, wanting to see our growth. Well, how do we do that unless we start to look at the data? We are developing what I call an HR dashboard. I will be presenting this information to Cabinet on a monthly or quarterly basis to really talk about what our organization looks like, the progress we're making, and how we can then use that data that we've had at our fingertips to really drive the decisions we're making. We all knew casually these things are happening or what's going on there. Looking at the data will help us really drive and make strategic decisions. So I had some high-level statistics up there just to give you an example of that. The next is a couple pie charts because we always love to show good graphics. And this is an example of some of the point-in-time data that we'll be showing, but this is not it. We're also going to take this information, so the data you're seeing on screen with the pie charts is today, but we will also look at that information quarter over quarter, take a snapshot of those results to see, well, are we making progress? How are we doing in those areas? And then finally, you know, if it's appropriate, we want to talk about monthly statistics too, right? So we know what how many hires we have, how many turnover, how many separations from service we have, in all of those forms and fashions. So we're going to take that information, start to digest it at the cabinet level, and then really use that strategically to help our decisions. Then, those are the kind of things that we are doing, the things that we are working on, where we've been. Let's talk about what's next. So these are some of our initiatives that we're working on. You know, we have our standard operating procedures manual now. We are fine-tuning that. We will have a administrator version out there shortly. We're considering a fall CSDA job fair. Continue our targeted recruiting. We're going to refine the metrics program. So I've developed the dashboard. I need to kind of get it operational now, and then the cabinet team will look at it and say, okay, is this really giving us good information? What else should we be looking at? One thing that I've been tasked to do is really push the HR department to assist in the professional development activities. You know, Ms. Bechdel's team does a lot with that. Dr. Wilson Turner does a lot with that too, with the different groups. So we will be pushing in and helping, whether it's with our clerk typists and office managers in developing customer service training, or partnering with Mr. Grogan and the hall monitors and job-related training. So the HR department, where possible, will start to help out in those areas. We reinstituted a quarterly newsletter, something that we push out to the entire organization. Some good reminders. Hey, it's tax season. Don't forget your, make sure your address is correct. But also just other reminders. Hey, it's seasonal affective disorder season. Make sure you're using our EAP services, or make sure you know there are supports available. So reminders, and also supports that we have available. So we're getting that out to the organization, partnering with whether it's our support units or the district itself to implement further employee wellness activities. We're looking at that, and always process improvement is always on my mind. So those are the things that we're working on in the HR division, and I thank you for your time.
The last thing that I'd like to add, as you saw on the screen that we're looking at the Grow Your Own with our adults, we're also exploring opportunities at the middle school and high school level for students that may be interested in going into education and fields that we have. That is still in the works. We're starting that conversation with our association so that we can see how we can partner to make some of those things happen for our own students as well.
So thank you for the exceptional presentation. Many of the items on these slides are items that have been talked about as dreams for some number of years among board members and members of the community, and to see some of them actually presented as having either been done or on the quick coming horizon is truly a wonderful experience, seeing us be in a position to be able to actually know things like how are we getting, are we improving, or are we not improving? These kinds of changes are really appreciated very, very much. With that introduction, I will open it for questions. Again, pick your most important question first. Who would like to be first? Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, that was excellent. So I guess prioritizing my question, I want to understand, it was about the first half really, and the community partnerships, which I think we're doing outstanding, and I greatly appreciate all your work in that front. And I do still get people asking how to partner, and I always point them right back to you, and about aligning with our mission and vision and goals. But I was curious, I don't know if people are shy or not, but I was curious if there's a way to, and I understand if this is not a good idea, but I was wondering if there's a way to have maybe like a proposal form for partnerships, like available on our website, like I'm an organization, I have an idea, I want to come into the school and do something along those lines. And that was just an idea that I had, and, you know, something along those lines.
Yeah. Well, I think that that could be something that could be applied district-wide, and I won't speak for the rest of the team, but I certainly think, like, if there's a structured process, I know that would help us, because they may reach out to you as board members. They may call a random phone number. They may show up. So if there's one targeted way that we could direct people, please fill out this form and send it to us, and we will evaluate it appropriately. I think that's a good idea.
We love that idea, Tabitha.
Yep.
That's awesome. Who would like to be next? Ms. Lang.
So your presentation is great, and there's so much more in this that has never been presented before. So I think thank you for putting it down on paper and really understanding the strategic plan and why this is important. One of the things that I kind of see missing is really the interview process. When we do vet some of our interviewees and they get to the first round with parents, teachers, and principal, what does that look like? What are the principals looking with versus maybe what the district looks for, or what the parents that are asked, or if parents are asked to be on those committees, what are they? What are they going into, or what are they there sitting at the table for? And I think sometimes parents want something different, what they're seeing in the applicants than the teachers, than the principals. And so I think maybe really understanding how those three that are considered move up, and why, if is a bigger pool. I've sat on committees as a parent, very confused, and then I've sat as a board member where I'm just sitting and seen kind of the streamlined system be very different across the board of how we're actually moving our candidates forward. So I just wanted to talk about that, or at least say that was one thing on here that I didn't see.
Yep. We do have a shared decision-making process, which we try to replicate in all of our buildings, and that includes the administrators in charge, the peer coworkers, whether that be support staff, teachers, as well as representations from all the units, as well as, where appropriate, community members to participate in those things. That is something we have identified, that we need to be stronger and clearer about what the process needs to look like in every building, and be supportive and provide training, so that when people come into the organization that have not done it recently, they know what our expectations are, and they know how to perform and do the right things and ask the right questions as an interview panel. So that's an opportunity we've seen and we're working on.
And I want to say thank you, because I do think some buildings have different personalities and are looking for different people, which isn't, I understand that can't be completely black and white, but sometimes it's way off compared to one building or another.
Ms. Krejci.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on what Ms. Lang said and just kind of inquire. I really love your presentation. I love the goals and the activities and the metrics, which are great. I kind of had questions about the time frame between a first interview and a job offer, because sometimes my understanding is that it takes a while. Maybe it takes to the end of the summer to fill some of those positions, and that can put us at a disadvantage, because if some other districts grabbed a attractive candidate, we're too late. So I'm wondering what we're doing, what the normal time span is, and what we're doing to kind of streamline that when we can.
Yeah, we do try to expedite all hires as quickly as possible. We are very aware of that, once someone meets at a building level and then it's funneled up to the district office, sometimes there is a delay between that, but we are very mindful of that. We try to, as soon as a posting closes on the off our website, we then reach out to the building administrator. Your posting has closed. What are you looking to do? Then we support them in that interview process. Whatever we need to do to get those candidates in, get them interviewed, and go from there. Then I think really the biggest delay that we see is really the reference checking process. Often once we've met with a candidate, interviewed them, we bring them in, and we get their information back. We say we need 2 references. We reach out to them. Their references don't get back to us. They provide us a personal reference, not a professional reference. So that takes us a little back and forth. So that kind of delays the process sometimes. And then we do make a decision. If we're looking for 3 references, are we able to do 2 references? If we've seen their performance before as a substitute or something like that. So we do kind of look at the process. I'm not able to put my flag in the ground that this is the exact timeline we will always process, but we try to go as quickly as possible through those.
Dr. Chatur?
Once again, great performance. Again, I love to see data. The fact that you're putting a data dashboard together for HR, awesome. With respect to growing our own, I mean, we talked about employing people for language companies to do translation services. When we have an ENL population here too, are we engaging our students here and trying to see how they can be used to, sort of interface with some of these things as they graduate? Maybe they want to be translators. They know how the system works. It's a better fit than, they can do a better job than an arbitrary person who's just reading something and trying to translate because they've actually gone through that process. And that also creates new job opportunities for that whole cohort. And as a part-time thing, brings up some entrepreneurial skills for them. And not a second question, but a comment. I mean, you talked about not being able to go all the way down south and get people. We got people from as far as Nevada, okay? So you can certainly go to Atlanta.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, the superintendent hinted at some things that are coming along in terms of grow your own programs. I think as it is a new foray for us, we are targeting teachers and teaching assistants first, but I think then beyond that, once we kind of get our hang of that, I think definitely exploring those areas, translation services, occupational therapy or occupational PT, speech therapy, things like that. I think we can certainly work to get our kids interested and grow our own from within.
Ms. Alexander-Mann.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And I'm curious, what institutions locally or within New York State do we find most of our staff? Are there specific institutions?
There likely are. Off the top of my head, I would not be able to say, I'm maybe looking at my colleagues in the back. Do you guys have any references off the top of your heads? Again, this is just observations we have. We wouldn't have necessarily thought about this.
Anecdotally, it's the College of St. Rose, either for their initial degree or their master's degree, or at SUNY Albany, we do get a lot of local staff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Smith.
Yeah, I just really wanted to express my thanks also, and I think Matt rocks here. So, excuse me, Mr. Petrin rocks. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you very much.
An excellent and very eloquent comment there, Ms. Smith. So I wanted to just say thank you so much for the reference to growing our own all the way back to students. As most people around this table knows, that is one of my pet projects. I would absolutely love to see this district full of teachers who went to Albany High so that we are full cycling our students out into the workforce, out into education, and then back into a full-time pensioned union job, which is a very exceptionally strong job for students to have. So I'm super excited about that. And I just wanted to piggyback on Ms. Krejci's comment about timing. It'd be an interesting thing to see if we could metric, right? That would be the kind of thing that would be interesting to see if we could keep track from the time the application was in to the time of the first interview, from the time of the first interview to the and then average that and then see, are we getting better at that or not better at that? So just throwing that out as a possibility.
Great idea.
Thank you. Anyone else have a second comment before we move on? Ms. Wilson.
Just because I enjoyed it so much. I also was thinking about growing your own and the pipeline, the idea of student pipelines, and also recruiting in general. And I feel that part of it is largely attributable to messaging. There's not a silver bullet in any of those categories. So, for example, someone who may have done a stint in the assembly may want to shift careers completely, and it's all about how we message that. So, opportunities in the district, shift careers, and things like that. So that was just like a more nebulous comment and I think you guys are doing excellent at that. And it's sort of like there's just not going to be that one singular trajectory that we promote within, or if we recruit without. It's more so like the varying messaging and things like that. And just a piggyback on that is also, I was curious, was there ever a trend or an idea to pursue, and I think we talked about this, that's why I'm asking, again, to remind myself about employee referral bonuses or incentives for employees, because I feel like inside Someone at a fair who may or may not work as a teacher at the school is different than I have a friend or colleague who's a teacher who tells me definitely come work here, and they're incentivized to do that. So that was the last.
Yeah. Yep. I'm very familiar with referral programs. It is something we could consider. Obviously, in the public education sector, it's a little bit difficult to move money around like that. But it is something we can look at after some of the other initiatives we're working on. Yeah.
Ms. Smith has a second comment. I'm making eye contact with anyone. Anybody else, or can we let Ms. Smith have the last word? Ms. Smith?
Okay. Back on related to this alumni, our student alumni, did you say once before, I may have asked this, that we have some contact with our alumni? I'm just wondering if there is a point in time, like, with every senior class, we sort of find out maybe in their third year out of school whether they've majored in teaching, whether what they're going on for, whether they're whether they have field experience. Is that another possibility to kind of really keep track of our graduates and what they're doing with their lives, and whether teaching is coming into being?
I don't believe we have that information right now, but I know we have started conversations to begin earlier. For example, Principal Comerford reached out to me the other day, as we're thinking about some of the careers that we're planning people for. Okay, let's talk to the HR division, see how they can partner with us. The CTE program, the work that Principal Marquez does is great for preparing people for careers. So I think we're starting those inroads, and we will start to build those connections, and then I think absolutely reaching out to the alumni and figuring out.
I think you're also speaking about how the high school reaches out to graduates. At this juncture, I know that a few months ago, Principal Comerford and myself, we were on a conference call with a company that could help us track our alumni so that we would know how many, who's still in the area, who's not in the area. The service is primarily for class reunions, but even in doing that, you still find out what are the careers that people have, where are they located, and so that reach back, we have not finalized anything with that company at all, because it was really just trying to see a sampling of what is it that information looks like when it comes back. So that conversation is still at the conversation level, but that's something that, as you bring that forward, that may be something that service could also be a part of tracking to help us with that.
Thank you so much for the excellent presentation. We appreciate your being here with us into the wee hours tonight. Hopefully not too wee. That brings us to the academic plan presentation and discussion.
So you get all of us tonight in some form or fashion. But I just want to say thank you so very much to Karen Bechtel, Dr. Wilson Turner, and Ms. McKenna. Also our entire team, Mr. Baker over there, and the work that we do to look at what are the things that are most critical for our students. As we go through our academic plan, as you know, that we have had some tight times here moving forward, and so we're going to share our best efforts and looking at our priorities and how we can still align with our vision, mission, and goals, and move forward with some recommendations with regard to our academic plan.
Good evening, Board of Education. I'm here to start us off to talk about the academic plan. This is the 4th year that we have engaged in this process. It really helps make sense of a complex budget. We actually collect information from across all the buildings, all the principals, directors, supervisors, and do a very deep analysis of the requests that they have, and then sort of compartmentalize it. We make sure that we, I'm sorry, let me just look at my notes here. We provide our administrators updates at various venues so that they know what the ongoing process of the budget development is. We compartmentalize the budget requests that folks ask for into 6 categories. That is really the heart of the academic life of school buildings, and they are the instructional program, social emotional health, school improvement. No matter if you're in an accountability system or not, school improvement should be a constant for any school building and district. College and career readiness, safety and security. And last year we added this operational component because the operational part of our how we do business is a core part of keeping things moving, keeping those wheels greased. So we developed 4 budgets this year. We really, because this seemed like such a tight year, we really didn't know if we were going to be able to even bring the academic plan to the budget floor. I believe last year and years prior, we were here in February. So this is really the first time that we have this in the public session and really looking at it. Our first budget is a budget that is kind of pie in the sky. We are really including everything that, not everything, but strategically what folks are looking for, what we believe we need to move forward. And then from there, we prioritize and we create that second budget, which is budget option B and budget option C. Until last week, when we finally had the state pass the budget and had a sense of really where we were with the numbers. So it was great work to do because it helped us conceptualize the kinds of things that we want to do in the district and in the buildings. And then it made life very easy because we were able to say, okay, let's sit down, this is the concrete number, and do this final prioritization. And that is what resulted in budget option D. The way we built this PowerPoint is that if we go to the theme one, the theme 1 instructional program, the items that are in red are the items that appear in budget option D. You should have that in that Excel spreadsheet as well. So we wanted to, because we didn't get out here in February, we wanted to sort of talk about the things that were in it, but really spend the time on those items that are in budget option D. So the very first thing under the instructional program is a 0.5 instructional coach for TCCE. This individual would not be content specific, but really be there to help support the teachers at TCCE in instructional strategies, growing their capacity for any of the academic content areas. It's really a high need. The second thing for the instructional program is the dual language teacher coordinator. Currently, there's a 0.5 individual at Delaware Community School who is providing support for Spanish language acquisition. What we're proposing is to make that a 1.0 position with 0.8 teaching support for Spanish language acquisition, and then 0.2 coordinator for the dual language program. And I know a coordinator really can help keep the program moving in a good, solid direction. The next things in the academic plan are a proposal for 2 new secondary instructional supervisors. We currently have 2 secondary instructional supervisors for the core areas, 1 STEM, 1 humanities. Those are huge areas that they have responsibility for. The STEM person has contact with, I think, about 125 teachers, and the ELA reading 160 teachers, that there's really very direct work that is going on, and that's a huge number of staff. I wanted to say we did have the pre-K per pupil allocation. We have been working on that for the past several years. That sort of fell off the priority list for budget option D. We did prioritize the web-based assessment system for K-12, which is eDoctrina. At elementary particularly, we're still pen and paper sometimes with our unit assessments and things, and it's very challenging to collect the data from some of those items, and this would streamline all of that. It's currently in place at the high school and would be an excellent addition to the district. Finally, for the instructional program is a recommendation for school supplies and training for our magnet, for Delaware Community School, the dual language program, and let me come back. For Ash and Montessori. Ash and Montessori are schools in good standing, and so they will not be receiving any state funds. Delaware Community School will be receiving funds, as will Toast, so that was our prioritization there, is to make sure that they have the funding to support those very specific programs.
Theme 2 is around social emotional support. Neither of these items made it into the option D, but just to explain what their purpose was, we were looking to create a full-time behavior specialist at Ash and a full-time behavior specialist at Pine Hills. Currently, our schools have a 0.5 behavior specialist, and they have some specialty classes in those buildings that could use more support with those teachers, which is the work of the behavior specialist, to partner with them. And we really tried to focus our efforts on direct services to students, which is why this didn't reach to the option D priority. Alternative placement, we looked long and hard for months this year to find appropriate placement for some of our most difficult and high needs students who haven't been able to be successful in our current educational or special education settings, nor have we been able to place them in out-of-district placements because of wait lists that exist there. And so we were looking for a program to build for ourselves to be able to accommodate those students. We did some cost analysis work with our local BOCES, and the cost came back, as you can see in the proposal, at over $2 million, and thus was not something that we would be able to sustain in this year's budget. Theme 3 is specific to school improvement, and the first few items deal specifically with our schools in and out of status. So as you are aware, we have two schools that will be that are in receivership. However, there are no new funds at this point in time to support those schools as there have been in the past. And so we wanted to make a concerted effort to put some resources toward those schools, and we've tried to prioritize those resources as well. We currently have a district improvement manager who will have responsibility for our 6 identified schools at the elementary level, but also wanting to provide ongoing support to our schools who have just come out of status, because we don't want to just say, hey, good luck, and hope that they continue to make improvement. So we thought it was important to bring in a school improvement manager, which is really a TOSA, or teacher on a special assignment level position, to help support those receivership schools in their collection analysis of data and monitoring progress towards their demonstrable improvement metrics provided by the State Education Department. We believe, just by the size alone for Giffen, beyond even their receivership status, that they are a building that would benefit from an additional literacy coach, which is why that was in the first ask. And then we also felt that both Giffen and Sheridan Preparatory Academy in their status could benefit from a full-time math coach, because math coaches are only 0.5. We prioritized the math coach getting to a 1.0 over the singular elementary literacy coach for Giffen. Sheridan Preparatory Academy requested teaching assistants in order to replicate the double dose model, and actually they do a triple dose model, and that they have found to be very effective, as has the district. But again, in prioritizing, trying to stretch the dollar as far as we could, we did not give everything to the receivership schools. We wanted to be able to sustain some funding for our schools in good standing so that they can continue to improve and to grow towards those schools that are reward and recognition schools. And so we've allocated a smaller amount for our elementary schools and for the high school that are not in status right now. And then one of the final requests under school improvement was to convert the senior monitor position at a Brooklyn into a hall monitor position to be able to expand the responsibility that that person is able to take on and support that school, and to replicate really the model that is at the main campus where they have an academy principal and a homeschool coordinator who are supporting the students throughout the day.
Theme 4 is college and career readiness. The first item is an AVID FTE for O'Neill, but we determined that we could sustain the program with stipends at that building this coming year. So we did not prioritize that for budget option D. The health science coordinator we're including in here, but there is no budget impact for that position. And the freight farm are funding that we would love to see to continue, not continue, but to start the work around the freight farm that has been here in front of the board, and getting our kids really active and involved in that activity.
So theme 5 and 6, theme 5, safety and security. There are currently five. So I was going back and forth between 3 and 5, but it's 3 full-time hall monitors and 2 part-time hall monitors for Albany High School, Tony Clements, and Pine Hills. The increase in hall monitors for Albany High School is really due to the rebuild and the opening of the new part of the building due to the rebuild in January. Tony Clement, based on the analysis of the number of hall monitors that we currently have, they are requesting an increase in their hall monitors as well. And then Pine Hills Elementary School, we've seen an increase in the high needs population at that school, and are requesting an increase of a full-time hall monitor to meet the needs of the high needs population at Pine Hills. For theme 6, operational support, records management. This year we began a multi-year records management project at Harriet Gibbons. So this would allocate additional resources to continue that work around purging documents that we no longer need, as well as electronically storing documents that we are legally required to retain for a certain period of time or indefinitely.
And as Karen already stated, our process from going to option A over $4 million to option D just under $500,000 was really an effort to prioritize where we would be able to have the most impact and to address as many of the requests as we could in a meaningful way. And we'll open it up for questions.
So thank you very much for your thoughtful and precise presentation. Board colleagues, I know I speak for all of us when I say we want every single thing for every single one of our students, no matter how much it costs. This is what we wish we could do, right? But we know that we're operating also in a time of less generous budget time, and also awareness of the impact on our local property taxpayers. So we have to balance all of these needs, and that is our role as board members. I ask you, as you think about your questions and prioritizing your very number one most important question, to think about also prioritizing our time and focusing on the things that are realistic for this year, and not asking questions about things that are more philosophical. We can do those at other times. We are down into the budget crunch, so think about the questions you have that are sort of in or out questions. You know, will this question lead you to preferencing something in the budget versus out of the budget? If not, is now really the right time for that question? With that introduction, I encourage you to think about your most important one. And Ms. Krejci, you seem very ready to go.
I had a couple of small questions about discrepancies on the slide, and I can do just one small question or a couple at your...
If they're really small and really factual, let's just rip
Okay.
through them, so if anybody else is
Okay.
confused, we can get them unconfused.
And by the way, it would be helpful for these to have line numbers to refer to, but under instructional program, the second to last line, magnet school supplies. And option C, it looks like you've got 6,000 for Montessori, and then 7,000 for Montessori training for a total of 13,000. But then in budget option D, you've got 15,000 for Ash and then 15,000 for Montessori. So I was wondering why the allocation to Montessori would go up $2,000.
I'll just mention, because I looked at this when I was looking over it, that they removed Montessori and another school from the third item in theme school improvement, where Montessori and I think it was DC Ash used to have $15,000 there, and they now have 0. So rather than an increase of 2 for Montessori, it's in fact a net decrease of 13, maybe 12.
But they need more. But I was just confused as to why any line would have more in budget option D than they had in option C.
Because we combine the magnet funding and the school improvement funding for Ash and Ash
Oh, I
and
see.
Montessori.
So this one
So they're
under
not
school.
getting-
Thank you. I
you
got
got
it. So the next question I had was for the math coaches. It looks like. I'm so sorry. This is a little hard to read. It looks like from option A onward, the text is increased from 5 to 1.0 at both Giffen and SPA, but the total increase of that would be 1.0. I think, not 2.0. So it sticks at 1.0, right? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, Ellen, I lost you on that one. Where are you?
So as you go across, the descriptor didn't adjust, right?
I'm not sure what line we're on.
Oh, I'm sorry. School improvement, math coaches.
So I guess
Thank you.
originally you wanted to put increase from 0.5 to 1.5 or something?
We wanted to increase from 0.5 to 1.0 at both Giffen and Sheridan Preparatory Academy.
For a total of 1, but it says a 2.
Sorry, I've got to squint too.
Oh, but I thought they each had
They
0.5.
do each have a 0.5.
Yes, so each is getting an additional 0.5.
I know. I got to think too.
So the question is the net increase a net increase of 1, or is it a net increase of 2?
It's
is
a
that
net.
right?
It's a net increase of 1.0, a half to go to each school to make them a whole behavior specialist. I believe that, or behavior specialist, math coach. I believe actually in option A, it would have resulted in Giffen having a 1.5, and Sheridan Prep having a 1.
Okay, that makes sense. The next question I had, and it probably doesn't affect anything, is budget under the school improvement line for C. You've got 15,000. Oh, I answered that question. Okay, sorry. So under hall monitors, the difference between budget option A and budget option B is for budget option A, you've got additional monitors added at the high school, Tony Clement, and Pine Hills. And then for options B and C, you've taken the additional hall monitor out of Pine Hills. This is 0 Pine Hills, and then you add it back in D. So that was a not a mistake, but a thing.
Yes, intentional.
Okay. Thanks so much. Those were my only nitpicky questions, and I'll save
Can
my
you just
last.
continue on that one, because I noticed that as well? How
So
come?
there was a very recent change in the status of the population at Pine Hills that we're trying to be responsive to, even in this moment in time, that we want to budget for long term. That supported even more their need to add an additional hall monitor. They currently only have 2, and so we will be increasing them to a 3rd.
Okay, who would like to go next? Ms. Lang?
So I know that over the few budget years, we've talked about reading TAs for kindergarten, kind of across the board. And I know that there's been a lot of scheduling to make sure that we're putting in our volunteers and our coaches during those ENL times. So I was wondering if you could just walk me through kind of how that has changed so that we are not in a position where we're asking for those TAs that I know that this was talked about in the last few years pretty a lot.
So we have what we call our reading TAs, but they actually provide support to our, mostly in most buildings, to our kindergarten and our 1st grade classrooms during both reading and math small group instruction time. And so that can occur during what we call the double dose hour, for literacy instruction. And so you'll often walk into a classroom and see the reading teacher, the classroom teacher, the ENL teacher, and the teaching assistant providing direct instruction and support to the students, or the reading TA providing support through students as they navigate through their independent center work. And so we have that in place in every single one of our elementary schools at this point in time, with the exception of Montessori, which has their own model. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or if there's something.
Well, there were some schools that were doing it differently. They were using it, and using the reading TA through the whole school or those type of things when we first implemented it. So because it wasn't back here in the academic plan, I just wanted to kind of talk about where it's evolved and if it was working and if that's where we're going.
So to that point, if I have a small kindergarten classroom and I have an ENL teacher, a special education teacher, a reading teacher, and a classroom teacher providing instruction, the groups get very, very tiny and may not be the most effective use of resources, where I may have a third grade reading group that has some significant deficit skills, where I might redistribute that TA to support that instruction instead of having 5 adults in a room to that ratio. So we do allow buildings to make those determinations so that they are effectively deploying resources, but primarily it would be in kindergarten and first grade where you will see that resource.
And I just want to say that prior to this, 2 years ago, a teacher would have said, I have a kindergarten class trying to teach them to read for 20 kids, 25 kids. So I just want to say that the conversation that's ensued sounds really encouraging to me. So I just wanted to bring it back to one of the very first things that, I came to the board wanting, and to see that it's come this full circle from a teacher with 24 kids trying to get them to read in kindergarten to 2 or 3 or 4 able bodies. So thank you.
Who would like to go next? I have a question. I always have a question. Once you add up the 2 lines that Ellen pointed out, basically each school has $15,000. And my question is, some of our elementary schools are quite a bit bigger than other elementary schools. With the way these funds are distributed, is it really logical that each school gets the same amount? And I realize it's not a whole lot of money no matter what, so that may just be it's not enough, so we're just giving everybody the floor. But it does seem odd to me that the smaller schools get the same amount as the larger schools.
So we really replicated it based on how the state would have awarded their school improvement grant funding. And so there's basically a flat rate based on the status of your school. So whether you are Albany High, or actually they did do a little bit more for Albany High, but whether you are Giffen or North Albany, if you're a CSI school, you're getting your $100,000. That's it. And so we did replicate that. We did try to go based on what they had previously been receiving and planning for, and try to adjust according to what their actual status was, which is why we came up with the flat $15,000 per school, except for the high school, which would have get the $25,000. So we could look at that differently, but to your point, because it's such a small amount of money, they will not receive additional funds. So they will, all of those schools in good standing this year are used to getting $50,000 that they will no longer get.
Is TQLP not a thing anymore?
They are done with that grant.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Dr. Chatoor?
Just want to understand this correctly. The safety and security, we talked, you started with 4 part-time hall monitors at the high school, 2 at Tony Clement and 1 at Pine Hills. And now you only want 1 at Pine Hills?
Correct, yes.
Anyone else for another question? A first question, Ms. Wilson.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to align so I can see what I'm reading, so my apologies.
That's all right. While you're waiting for Dr. Chatoor, the high school hall monitors, there are still more monitors coming to the high school at the midpoint of the year, which are in the essential item section of the budget, which is why we felt comfortable with, we'll have to just wait a little bit longer with the part-time ask. That was really to support, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lloyd, the lunchtime needs of the high school. And so that's why we were comfortable there. And we do have significant staffing at TCC in terms of hall monitors, and we would like to continue to support in that way, but in terms of making decisions and distributing resources, we thought it was best to give it to Pine Hills, who's having that immediate influx in that population.
How many hall monitors are at TCCE right now? So Pine Hills,
11.
Pine Hills, which is obviously an elementary school, we wouldn't expect them to have a comparable number, but they have 2 and you've gone up to 3. TCCE, you have 11, and the one you're not unfortunately asking for, because we all want everyone to have everything, would be the increment between 11 and 12. So it's a much smaller increment as a percent than from 2 to 3 at Pine Hills. Okay, thank you. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you for that opportunity. The alternative, well, I want to say I appreciate, and the rationale was clear on why you prioritized things the way you did. So I didn't have many questions, except for the alternative placement. It appears that there was a population of 24, and then they came off of the budget altogether. And I was wondering why not a step-down approach to place some, or, so that was what I was curious about.
So what we were designing was an actual entire program. So there was no option to do, a piecemeal, because what we're struggling with is those individual placements. And so what we designed was, if we were to do this ourselves and create a program that would be able to service these students with all of the resources that we would need, that was the cost estimate that was given back to us.
What the question I've asked, I'm still not understanding about this, is what are we paying to educate those students right now? Because that's a $2 million cost, but there's the kids exist. We're teaching them, right? So shouldn't there be a net kind of
But not a $2.4
netting
million
out?
And that's you can speak to it from the special education lens, what the out-of-district placements cost per pupil. We would get some of it back, but wouldn't cover the $2.4 million.
I understand.
But
I guess
I couldn't give you a number off the
and
top of my
this
head.
is, I actually was not planning to ask this question, because to me this is all theoretical, right? Because we don't have $2 million, right? But I would like, if we're ever going to have this conversation about this program again, I would need to understand, what are we saving by not having those out-of-district placements? Because the $2 million, I don't think I don't think it really costs us $2 million. It costs us the difference between what we're paying now and the cost to run the program. Again, theoretical. Someday, when we get back to this, we would have to understand that. Tabitha, did you get your answer sufficiently? Okay. Who else has something? Tamaris, you ready? Ms. Alexander-Mann.
So you were, a behavior specialist was consistently being requested in A, B, C, but not in D. How's that being addressed around the student
Yep.
support?
So that's the beauty of the school review process. So when we went into those two schools in particular, Ash and Pine Hills, Ash realized that they're a big building, and yes, they would love a 1.0 behavior specialist, but there were some tweaks that they would be able to make internally with their systems, roles, and responsibilities to begin to address those needs more efficiently and effectively. Doesn't mean they won't ask again next year once they can say that they've tightened up those particular pieces. The conversation with Pine Hills was similar, but they had both the behavior specialist and the hall monitor in their ask, and they felt like the hall monitor would have been was the most important thing to have at this point in time.
Anyone for a second question? Ms. Krejci?
Yes, I had originally wanted to ask about the alternative placement for those kids, because obviously if the net cost of those kids to educate is, I calculated at $85,000 per, it doesn't seem like it ever would be likely, but I'm sure they're costing us something. It's costing us something now to educate each one of them in whatever setting they're in. So I'd really like to know that for next year, if that ever becomes a possibility. And my question actually was about the e-doctrina, because everything else I completely understand why you're doing. I understand your rationale, but could you tell me more about that? Is that younger kids taking assessments online?
No. So I'm really excited because it's really about automating the staff end of that work. So right now, just to give you an example, we have a great assessment called the Lori Strong Assessment that we use to really drill down and diagnose what the reading deficits are for our students. But it is literally a paper pencil assessment that teachers sit and administer individually, and then trying to compile that data in any meaningful way to look across the system and progress monitor is Herculean. And so we're wasting instructional coach time trying to compile that data, whereas eDoctrina could do that and many, many more things for us in terms of being able to do like a Scantron or an answer sheet and bubble those things in. And then I have a beautiful item analysis that is aligned to the standards and all these pieces that will help support our dashboard metrics.
So to follow up, just trying to understand this, this would be the teacher filling it. This would be
Yes.
still a human administering an assessment to a child, and then the teacher fills out a Scantron sheet with bubbles rather than writing things down, or enters things into a computer rather than writing things down on a piece of paper. But the child, from the child's point of view, the
Correct.
assessment remains, thank you, that there's a big relief to me.
And I'm oversimplifying it completely, but that's the gist of it. It's a staff implementation, not kids in front of computers.
I'm so glad Dylan asked that question. Who else has a second question? Ms. Lang.
So I see that the dual language coordinator is going from a 0.5 to a full. And I wanted to make sure that is 0.2 for a coordinator position with the things that the coordinator, monthly meetings, committee meetings, working with outside Auburn community partners. Is that enough time as the 0.8 representative of the needs of the kids for those Spanish classes? So I was just kind of, how did you come up with that 0.8, 0.2?
So the 0.2 equates to 1 day a week. And we put the point A again, our focus, or our philosophical focus as a team was direct service to students. And so we felt like we wanted, because that position has been so inconsistent over time because it's been difficult to fill for, we wanted to focus the majority of that position on its direct service to students and begin to build that 0.2 coordinator role in support and partnership with the building principal and our E&L director.
Anyone else with a second question? I have a second one, but then you can have a third one. That's fine. The records management piece, is that a 1 year, we're going to get this done and then we're going to be done? How?
Bill, want to talk to that one? Bill?
So the amount of money that we spend, the less money we spend, the more years it's going to take. But this is historical records that we need to get to, but they're not active student records that are affecting us right now.
Correct.
So if we were looking to steal a few dollars from the budget, we could stretch that out longer by doing less. Mr. Hogan.
What the strategy has been is to do electronics on the most recent records, so that we're starting and we're building a good base from this year, and then we will, if we can catch up backwards, we will. But
So the amount in the budget, which is $50,000, does that cover just this year, or does that cover this year and starting to dig out some of the older ones that need to be scanned?
I don't think we have a proposal. We did some work this year, and we also have a grant, but we could easily put $100,000 a year on this for 5 years easily, if you were, because there's more than student records we should be doing this with.
Ms. Smith.
Can I just follow up on that? So, sorry. So, we have obviously been scanning records, archiving records. How have we been doing that? And then, is this 50,000? Is this just existing staff that are already maybe doing this as a side part? Oh, contracted. Okay.
So we currently have a contract with Capital Region BOCES, and they are sending staff to the district to do that work. We also applied for a records management grant, and we're waiting to hear back on whether we receive that grant or not.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I think I know the answer to this question, but this is actually maybe one for Mr. Baker. But eDoctrina, and I do have schools that use that. I want to kind of understand how that interfaces with your work, your dashboard.
So one of the pain points was already described by Dr. Wilson Turner, in that it is painful now for staff who are administering the assessments to actually collect that information in a way that they can enter it into our current student information system, so that the dashboards that we have in use now can extract that information in a way that we can then stage it for them for review. So eDoctrina is currently in pilot form in a few locations. So we have already integrated back end or the student population of the entire information system with that system. So in a lot of ways, we're already integrated when it comes to the data exchange. So now we'll be able to seamlessly layer in more assessments so that we can be more robust in populating the dashboards.
I did, but you asked my question about the records word for word, so it was uncanny.
I have one more. I don't know if this is already in somebody else's brain. The Assistant Director of Professional Review that you've suggested removing from the budget, which is very lovely, is that really a result of the change in the legislation around APPR and the requirements around APPR? Is that why we don't need that person? I feel like we just added that person just a couple of years ago because of the burden of managing APPR. And am I understanding that correctly?
You are correct that we just added that position, but it's more a function of the other administrative resources we've added to the system at this point in time through the assistant principals and the capacity building we've done there, and then the ask specifically for instructional supervisors, additionally at the secondary level, and allowing them to pick up more of the evaluation process and work directly with the teachers that they supervise, and still be able to accomplish our requirements that have not been lifted, which is to have an outside evaluator conduct at least one of those evaluations.
Okay. I also wanted to ask about the other eliminating positions, the math coach and the high school data coach. I know that they're not filled positions, so these are not human beings, but they are positions that we established at some point because we felt that we had a need. How are we delivering those services in the absence of those people? And also the BCTLs, I was surprised to see that as a cut.
So over time, as we've been looking at these different structures, and particularly at the high school, and evaluating how it's working in given places, that has informed this redesign that we have spoke about having these two new supervisors that really have a lot of the fundamental duties of an instructional coach, of working with staff. The coaching model at the elementary building in the middle level is working beautifully. But at the high school, I think when you have one literacy coach, there's, I don't know, how many teachers at the high school? 100 and... There's so many teachers. They can't have that same level of impact. So we really thought long and hard because we had 3 coaches. We're leaving the literacy and the math coach at the high school. But the data coach, we know that can get absorbed into the work of the others and these instructional supervisors. In trying to fund those positions too, we went out twice for a middle school math, maybe even 3 times for a middle school math coach, and were unsuccessful in finding an accomplished person that could really help lift the program. Not that there aren't internal people that are quite accomplished in math, there are, but they don't want to leave the classroom. So we have we've had no success with that, and yet we still have the need to try to support more middle school math teachers, and we have a lot of new math teachers in our district, very many of them. And then the middle school BCTLs, the high school BCTL structure is a system that works beautifully. They're all in the same building. We have a monthly meeting. Everybody's on the same page. It works great. But at the middle level, you have 3 separate places, plus TCCE and AIS, where you're trying to draw those middle school BCTLs together. It's a challenge to get them in a room together. So in order to, a lot of that work is about helping to support that consistent program across the system. So when we really looked to this redesign and having the 2 additional supervisors, we were trying to be also mindful of these systems that aren't working as efficiently as they could and how they are in the same category.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Anything else on the academic plan? Obviously, we're going to now hear about the budget. We may need to revisit the academic plan in part of our budget conversation as we put all of the pieces together, but anything else specific on the academic plan before we move on? Thank you very much, as always, for your hard work.
mouse disappeared. It's gone. Okay, good evening. We're winding down in the budget process. We've got some good state aid in the last week, so we're a lot better off than we were last time we did this. So here's our agenda topics for this evening. Here's the district's vision, mission, and goals. If we don't adopt the budget this evening, we would adopt it on April 16th, and that really needs to be the last date because there's so many things that follow this. So since we last saw you, we actually went out to bid with some bond anticipation notes for the high school borrowing, and they came in at a favorable interest rate. Under what we had expected, so that enabled us to actually reduce our projected interest expense for next year. So that's a good thing. And then there were some staff transitions that increased about $37,000. On the revenue side, great news there. There was a $3 million of new state aid. Most of that was in foundation aid, which is great because it was unrestricted and it really allowed us to put that money toward operations. So this is where we are sitting before the mandates and essential items, essentially a $1 million deficit, a little less than a 1% increase in tax levy. The mandate slide, there were just the shaded areas are the places where you see a change. We did a reduction of 1 FTE and a special education teacher. Again, these aren't staff cuts. These were things we had asked for additions, and now we're just backing off from asking for 2 positions to 1. And the teaching assistants, again, we had originally requested 5, now we're requesting 3. So those are the items that were removed. Those 2 items equal $227,500. We're able to remove those from the budget. The essential items are the same, except we added a new line on the bottom, which is software for Naviance for college and careers. And then there's an explanation there that follows. It talks about all the different functions or tasks we will use that software for. Essentially, we're expanding the software we currently use we're expanding it to the secondary level. So after including mandates and essential items, projected deficit is 2.9 million, closer to 3 million, about a 2.57% tax levy increase. So if we carry those numbers onto this slide, that's a projected deficit number you see is repeated. What you just heard this evening when they prioritized the academic plan and tried to pare it down, we intentionally were targeting about a $500,000 proposal of additional enhancements to the academic plan. We are continuing everything that's currently occurring in the plan is continuing. These would be new additions. The other suggestion when state aid came in was to reduce our reliance on the fund balance appropriation to balance the budget. The reason being we know with the current labor contracts and the new staffing needs we're starting to see already as additions open up in the high school, and also we're planning for another new middle school. So with those anticipated expenses coming up over the next 3 to 5 years, well, some will actually hit next year, let's call it 1 to 4 years, it would be helpful to back off our dependence on fund balance a little bit, which would give us a little more, another tool in the future, a little more leverage into future to deal with some of these financial challenges. So we were doing a what if here. If the tax levy increased by 2.25%, the tax cap is actually 2.87% this year. That would raise about 2.6 million in revenues. And also, based on the enrollment change that was also discussed and finalized tonight at North Albany, there are staff savings there of 1.3 million. So this is one scenario which would actually, if we went out with a 2.25% tax levy, we could do the academic plan option as we discussed tonight, and the budget would be balanced. Here's our tax levy history. If you look at the last 5 years, the average annual increase in tax levy has just been a little over 0.5%, or 0.64% on average. That's very good. It's got to be very good compared to the other districts in the state. If we take a look back at the changes in the homestead tax rate over the 5-year period, it's averaged at 1.54% on average annually. For the non-homestead tax rates, which is the commercial tax base, their rates have actually decreased 1.76%, but even with that, the non-homestead tax rate is still about 19% higher than the homestead rate. So there has been an effort over the years to try to bring those tax rates closer together. You want to retain your commercial tax base and encourage them not to leave, and also encourage other businesses to come in and do business in Albany. Overall, that will help the homestead rates in the long term. Here is this actually goes with what we have laid out before, basically the dependence on reserves and fund balance to subsidize the budget. 6.275, 6,275,000 for 1920. But we've also suggested backing off that a little bit on the what if slide, backing off from the 5 million. Here's a snapshot of our reserves and fund balance. You'll notice a big decline between 17-18 and this year. That's because of the withdrawal of the capital reserve primarily. But you'll also notice, our reserves and fund balance in total are on the lower end of where they have been historically over the last several years. So we will continue to communicate information about the budget. There's been quite a bit of activity for request. We're booking the calendars for all the community groups that would like us to come out and talk about the budget. Actually, Mr. Lesko did one this evening. So with that, I will turn it back over to the president for discussion.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We should all be doing a happy dance of joy and thanking our lucky legislators for the much improved state aid outlook, which is allowing us to even have this conversation tonight. It could have been a much, much different picture. So the changes that happened between the governor's budget and the adopted budget were very, very substantial. And anyone who sees a local legislator should thank them because they really, truly, the legislature did help us tremendously this year. With that introduction, I will once again open it to questions, one at a time as always. Who would like to go first? Ms. Krejci.
So I just wanted to confirm, just looking at the slides on page 15, the projected is to use 5 million out of the appropriated fund balance, and then if the what if slide was implemented, instead of using 5 million out of reserves, you'd use about 4.5 million?
Yes.
Okay, so the 2019-20 budget on slide 15, that's not the same budget as the...
I think can you use slide numbers instead of page numbers? Just 'cause we're not all looking at the
they are slide numbers, I'm sorry. Oh, they are slide numbers. On slide 15, you've got the planned use of reserves and fund balance, but it's not the same, those numbers aren't the same numbers as in the what if budget on slide 11?
Right. The what if budget is one example by itself of one scenario. But I didn't change the graphs or the totals for reserves and fund balance and assume we were just doing that. So I showed slides 15 and 16 based on what is currently proposed, basically without the what if. The what if would be another course of action, a different direction.
So is the what if then, is that the what if with the revenues and expenses off of slide 10?
Yes, and it carries right through. You see the 2.973 million is the third line down on the what if slide. So everything is the same up until that point, and then there are some what if scenarios of if we add the academic plan, if we.
But I think my question was are the numbers on page 10 aligned? I'm sorry, a slide number. Are the numbers on slide 10 aligned with the numbers on slide 15?
They're aligned with, yes. Essentially, yes.
Thank you.
They start with, on slide 11, the first three lines where it says revenue, expense, and the deficit. That aligns with slide 10 and slide 15. So currently in the budget, we are using $5 million. Then we add the what-ifs to balance the budget to bring it down to a zero so that everything's in alignment.
Ms. Lang.
So yay. I would have been having much more coffee had we not have gotten the $3 million. But in all seriousness, the academic plan and everything, I really want to kind of open up discussion, I think, to our board colleagues to talk about whether or not we should do a flat 2% this year. With all of the politicalness that's going on, I want to make, or we have to really make it crystal clear that that is what our allowance is. Because the governor and the bills of the 2%, they've really been talking about a 2% increase. And I want to make sure that if we do go out over the 2%, it's very clear to our voters that this was what we are not going over the 2% flat. And so I don't know if this is something that our colleagues want to talk about in whether or not we can have the budget pass if we go over 2% at all. So I was just wondering if that was something that anyone else was concerned about as far as making sure that the budget does pass.
One of the things that I had on my mind, which actually leads to that, although that wasn't the causative reason of me having this thought, but it does sort of boil down to the same thing, is that we had been anticipating the North Albany school savings would be $1.6 to $2 million, as Ms. McKenna used those old figures tonight, and we're actually at 1.3, which I understand is because a certain amount of uncertainty around how the labor adjustments would be made. So that difference between the 1.3 and the 1.6 is really the difference between a 2.25 and a 2% budget. And there's so much uncertainty in those numbers. To me, it feels like an appropriate use of fund balance to correct for that, because we don't know really whether it's going to be 1.3 or 1.6. So if we are a little more generous with our estimates and maybe it comes out at 1.6, versus 1.3, we can use the fund balance to mask that difference. And that brings us, I think, very, very close, or if and actually even slightly under to like 1.9 something. I didn't do all the math, but just looking at the way the numbers play out, I think it gets us awfully close if we put in $300,000 of additional reserve, knowing that we don't anticipate using them all, but we are hedging that bet. Right, that's what we're doing. We know we might have to use it, but we don't expect to have to use it. Was my thinking, and it did get us to gets us close to that 2% number. But that's to me a lucky accident of the way the math works out. Anyone else want to comment on that, Dr. Chatur?
You couldn't have said it any better. That's exactly what I was thinking too. If also with the academic plan, I mean, as much as we want to do everything that we want to do. Because we have to be frugal, and if it's not sustainable this year, there's no guarantee it'll be sustainable next year. It's always this challenge because you're dependent on state funds. So if there was any which way to somehow come at that 2%, it makes this budget a favorable budget for the community with all the tax increases, all the federal SALT treaty laws, and all of those things. they're getting bashed any which way you look at it. So anything we can do to make it a little less painful, but still keeping to our curriculum and all the improvement, because I don't want us to take 2 steps back from all the progress we have made. But I'm sure Bill can work his magic and come up with some magic number that gets us at 2%.
Anyone else have a comment? Ms. Smith?
So I agree. I think because the only other option would be is to not have the academic program expenditures, and I think we don't want that, right? So I would tend to support that recommendation.
Anyone else want to make a comment? Ms. Krejci?
I agree with Ms. Lang and Dr. Chator that I think, given the tax increases that are coming, and given the tax increases for homestead property owners just because of the way the taxes are calculated, I think keeping it to 2% would be great. But I really, through our questions and answers, am convinced that academic plan option D is really cut to the bone. I don't think it would make a lot of sense to cut it further. Whereas taking another $200,000 from fund balance, that would be the same amount we budgeted for this year. So it doesn't represent an excessive dipping into savings to do it. And again, those costs may not actually come to pass if the more optimistic estimate for the labor savings from the new middle school configuration comes out.
So I think what I'm hearing people say is that some combination of a very careful look at the staffing estimate to see if perhaps that is too conservative, right? Because that's another way you can make these numbers change, is you can change that negative 1.3 to a higher number, or you can, or actually a larger negative number, a more negative number, or an increase in the use of fund balance to get us to a place where we're at something under 2%. Or at the very most 2% is where the board would like to be. Now the question for you all is, do you want to take, this hasn't happened since my very first budget, would you care for us to take a 5-minute recess where you can do some math and then come back to us with a final presentation that we could vote on and potentially be in a position of voting on it tonight? Or are you ready to do that without the 5-minute recess? Or what do you want to do?
Yeah, we actually built a spreadsheet to do this. So we...
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yes, about 4:30 today. Right before I ran out of the building on fire.
Excuse me, I would still, and thank you, and I know that we have worked on that, but I would like to have an opportunity for cabinet to have a little caucus for about 5 minutes with that information, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, if that's okay.
That sounds great. My phone attached to the internet says it is 10:07. Let's say 10:15. Does that give you enough time, Mrs. Adams? 10:15. We await a report from the conversation.
We have a visual. We're awesome. So as we are getting ready for our visual, I'd like to just say thank you very much for the time for us to be able to talk a little bit, just to see what we could do in terms of making additional cuts so that we are not feeling the bleed in one area or another. Cabinet as a whole While we respect the opinions of the board, we would like to make a recommendation not to deplete our fund balance so much. And we would, in essence, look at splitting the baby down the middle and bearing part of that burden from the academic plan as well as from the fund balance. And so in looking at where we are, making some of our adjustments, we have thought about additional ways that we could leverage some of the other resources. So the coach for TCCE, we're looking at eliminating that because we have just looked at other instructional supervisors and those responsibilities can be absorbed. We have reduced the amount of funds going to the magnet schools, and we have reduced the amount of funds going to school improvement. Records management, we did look at reducing that as well. And then with the freight farm, eliminating that because we can pursue grants to fund that endeavor. And so with that, the remaining funds would then be absorbed through our fund balance, which, Bill, drum roll, the dollar amount is?
What we essentially would do is reduce the academic plan by $143,750, and then we would reduce this fund balance change by $156,587. Somewhat similar split in the cost between fund balance and reducing program. That would put the tax levy at 1.99. The new fund balance number would read $300,113. It previously was at $456,700. So we're still backing off the dependence of fund balance by $300,000.
Can you just look for a minute with me at the per school allocations? I think that you have $80,000 in at the bottom, $20,000 in at the top. Is that right? But I think there's 7 schools at the bottom. Is that right? So was that intentional that you went to 80 instead of 70 there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
I think that what we have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was, yes.
Oh, it's the
6
Albany
at
High
10,
factor.
6
Okay.
at 10 and the high school at 20.
Okay. Oh, Ms. Alexander Mann.
Can we scroll down? I just want to. All right, how much of a savings do we have by doing this?
On the whole thing, we're saving $143,750.
That's wow. Okay, thank you.
So I appreciate the effort. Personally, I still feel like we should keep as much of the academic plan as we can manage, because I know that for many months you thought that the estimate was going to be 1.6 to 2, and now we're at 1.3. And so that to me, I guess that's my hesitation is how, maybe I'll ask it as a question. How about that? This is what happens. The later we get, the less able I am to formulate my thoughts in a form of a question. Mr. Hogan, how confident are you on the 1.3 that you have now allocated for North Albany? And how much variance is there in your expectation of that? Do you understand my question?
Yeah. I mean, we've went through every position again recently, and that's the true number of where we expect to be in terms of savings is the 1.3.
So why was it so much less than the 2? I understand that there's some uncertainty about labor costs, but we had gone from 2, which was no new sections at Arbor Hill, to 1.6, which was new sections at Arbor Hill. Now we're doing no new sections at Arbor Hill, and it's 1.3. And so that's such a huge variance. And I realize that there's uncertainty in labor costs, and there may be things that you cannot say in a public setting about that, but I'm having a hard time understanding what happened to $700,000 of savings.
Right.
So there are 5 positions that we are maintaining, because we do not want to go into a RIF.
Okay, so the one that pains me the most, now they all pain me because I think that we're moving forward, is the TCCE. Point 5, I know those kids that are in those programs, I know that we can do things when we wrap around, and I want to make perfectly clear that those teachers have everything that they feel they need, and that this instructional coach takeaway is not just another takeaway from their program. We've cut them before, and so it just, we really want this program to be successful. And so the one that's the most painful for me in this cut is the TCCE instructional coach for our teachers.
So this position was really designed before we had talked about the restructuring of the supervisors. And this position would help to build the project-based learning curriculum for the middle school side of the program. So we're confident that with the additional instructional supervisors, that we will be able to have them work with the instructional staff at Tony Clement to build those project-based learning units.
What percent, or what's our traditional experience of people resigning between this point of the year and the beginning of the next school year?
We do see some resignations. You know, it's hard to tell until we get to July, really, when we see that hit. I think when we looked at it in the types of positions we were looking at, that content area, about six a year that we are looking forward to.
So in a normal year, and every year is a different year, so there's no normal. These are individual human beings making individual life decisions. So there's no way to predict performance, but on an average year, you would expect 6. Okay.
And if I might add something to that, that doesn't guarantee that it
there's
is
a perfect
in the
match.
tenure area.
I totally understand that. I want our Ms. Alexanderman.
Just because I don't have it in front of me, and can you scroll up a little bit? So under school improvement, or maybe that is a. Oh, that's it. All right. So. Okay. So. Okay, that's great. So. Can we look under school improvement? Okay. All right, good. I just wanted to see what, and nothing changed. Okay. I too agree with, let me piggyback on what Ms. Savage referenced. I am concerned about taking so much out of the academic plan,
Well, why don't we try this? Can we go through, I mean, I think there's some things I am definitely comfortable taking out because I think you've proposed alternatives like the freight farm, if we can fund for that, if we think there's fundraising for that, I have zero issue with that. But there are some that I think are really problematic, and we went through them so fast that I don't really have them in my mind. And I would like to ask you guys to do that one more time, more slowly. The ones that are not in the current proposal. Can everybody work with me on that? So, do you want to ask your question while they're preparing to do that, or do you want to?
Well, I just again just thinking this through. So I think what I'm hearing staff say is that you want to keep a bit more in reserve. That's really the rub. And you believe you'll have these, you can cover these other things at least for this period of time. So, okay. All right. I mean, I don't want to take away from what you're saying, Anne. I wanted to figure out what the, that was really the kind of the idea, is that you want to still save some of that money.
That is definitely the idea, to reduce our reliance on the fund balance. I guess I would ask, the other question I would have, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do this tonight now, but is over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, what we've always allocated money out of the fund balance. How often have we actually used the money we've allocated out of the fund balance? Every year I've been on the board almost, we've had money to input into the capital reserve without it impacting our fund balance. So that's part of the reason I'm struggling with this, is that we have an uncertain expense, right? We may get 6 resignations and they may line up, may not. We have a real need that the cabinet felt we were already cutting to the bone to get down to item D, and now we're deciding, and I hate to put it so frankly, to not do what we know our kids need in order to not have a reduction in force for teachers that we just don't happen to have a need for. That sounds terrible. I love all of our teachers. I want them all to stay. But if this is the program that the cabinet needs, then this is the program we should be paying for. I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my voice and my cold at the same time. Ms. Krejci.
I do agree with you on that, and I agree with Ms. Lang that I'm really sad to see the TCCE instructional coach go, because those teachers really need this stuff. Those kids really need that stuff, and just they don't have a beds code, so sometimes they kind of get a little less than other places because they're not an official school. But I feel honestly passionate about that, but I will say, if you wanted to split the difference again one more time, I think I could wait for a grant to start the freight farm, and I think I could get rid of the records management archiving. Maybe we can take it down another. Maybe we can just reduce it by 80,000. Would
So
that?
can we walk through them again? Because I really know I don't have them. Can we just walk through them top to bottom?
Okay, I'm gonna try to do this live, but correct me because we're live, if I make an error. The instructional coach here was $41,750, so that would be taken out. And then we have the magnet schools would be 10,000 each instead of 15,000 each, so there was a 10,000 reduction there. And then if we go to the school improvement dollars, the allocations were reduced from $15,000 to $10,000 for all schools except the high school, which was at 25, is reduced to 20. So that was a savings. The new number there is 80,000. It was 115. So there's 35,000 reduction there. And the freight farms were 30,000. That was removed. And records management was 50,000, and that's now at 23,000.
Well, hang on. I just wanted to do the math and make sure we're all on the same page. 41,750, 10,000, 35,000, 30,000, and 37,000. Those are the cuts for a total cut of 153,750. Do I have that right? 27. Thank you. And so that's a total reduction in the academic plan of 143,750. Okay. So now I yield back to my board colleagues if anyone has a comment. Actually, Mrs. Adams looks hopeful at the microphone. Mrs. Adams.
So if we wanted to go a little bit more into the fund balance, then we could bring the coach back at 41.5. The other reductions are still, we can still work with that. The records management, we are at a point where we really have to do something, because I can't even begin to explain how much we need to get that done. and it's a lot that has to be done. And so kicking that can down the road presents some problems in other areas or challenges in other areas. Even if we were to drop that to an even 20, we may be able to do that.
I would suggest we keep it at 27 because you started, I think, at 75. I can't.
Right.
I think my mental picture of the far left is 75. So to think that we're going to go down to 20, I mean, we need to make progress on that front. I feel compelled on the school by school funding. These folks you told us are used to having roughly $50,000 per school to do the things that they need to do to make their school successful and unique. And to bring them down to $10,000 per school, because we think we might not be able to match these teachers up, to me, I don't think that's, for me, my vote would be put the schools back up, bring them back at least to the 15,000, so that they have at least something so that they can function. That would be my preference. Drop the freight farm, drop the records management to 25 or some, pick a number. But put the schools back and put TCCE back would be my personal preference. But I feel like I'm talking too much. And who would like to make a comment?
So
Ms. Lang.
I would like to keep everything. So that's where I'm at.
We would do.
But that's what I would like to push. And so I think that our colleagues, we really need to come to a consensus here. What are we doing? So I think that at some point I need to figure out where everybody else is.
Okay, so let's make sure everybody gets a chance to talk now. Jen spoke, Vicky, and then we'll move on.
I just want to lay out the options again. And where we first started was, basically kind of an even split, taking, leaving it at 2.25, but we don't want that. Then splitting between the reserve fund and reductions, right? And now we're talking about perhaps having fewer reductions and putting in a bit more on the reserve side.
Right. I think at this point the question is, I believe, and perhaps we need to have a straw poll on this, but what I believe we are come to a consensus on is that we believe that it is not appropriate to ask our taxpayers to do more than 2% this year. That is a consensus position? Okay. So now the question is, how do we make that number under 2%? There are three options. We tell Bill to go back and look again at the number of the savings that we got from North Albany and see if that number could get any higher, right? That would be one way to bring it closer to the 1.6. Or we cut from the academic plan, or we increase the use of fund balance. Again, I am still interested in my question, which I asked before, which I don't think you had an opportunity to answer, which is how often have we actually used our fund balance? Even though we put it in the budget every year, we don't often, in my understanding, use it. And now Mr. Hogan has his hand on his microphone.
Yeah. So we will use it this year. We expect to use most of the fund balance allocation this year. Fund balance was 1.67%, I think, the last fiscal year. It's going to be hovering around 2% as we go out. So the thought process when additional state aid came in and we had some additional room is we know we have some big financial challenges coming our way in the next few years. How much do you want to grow program that is a reoccurring expense when in the future financial challenges may force you to look at some other tough choices? So that's why it was proposed the way it was. It was kind of a split between the academic plan and a reduction of dependence on fund balance. The budgets are getting tighter and tighter because it's just the way it is. I mean, we're getting into tight squeezes, especially in the early drafts every year. So we're not expecting big surpluses going forward.
And we understand that. And the practical reality of an indefinite 2% tax cap has to be understood by the labor force. It's a 2% tax cap that we will be facing indefinitely. And so if our salaries are going up by more than 2% and our tax cap is not going up by more than 2%, unless we can get sufficient state aid to make up that difference, there's not so far we can go. Okay, that was very helpful, Mr. Hogan. So we are tighter than we have been in the past, I think is really the takeaway there this year. And anticipated in future years, that is the Albany High project, which we have committed to. That is the contract enhancements at all levels that we have done for every staff member. And that is push is going to come to shove at some point. So the question then becomes, again, there are 3 ways we can change this number. We can increase, we can basically hope that we get better results, better savings out of the closure of North Albany, or we can increase our reliance on fund balance, or we can decrease program. Those are the 3 options we have. Mr. Hogan has already said he's looked very carefully at that number for North Albany, and he truly believes that that is the number and that there's not room there.
The entire cabinet has spending, in fact, they've spent more time on this than I have, looking at every single position and where things would be placed and depending on the movement of kids. But when we take out the 5 positions with a RIF, if you add that money to the 1.3 million, that's about a 1.750, which is in the range where we were before.
So, I am hearing a lot of desire to keep the TCCE money and to keep my personal desire to keep the school's money. I'm not feeling a lot of love for freight farming, and I'm not feeling a lot of love for records management. If we do those 3, and anticipate that we will get some additional savings in the labor allocation because of the North Albany closure. It's really the fund balance and the North Albany, that's really, both of them are play money, right? We don't know the truth of either of those things. So we can make the reduction seem bigger, or we can make the use of fund balance larger. The only way to really cut program is to cut program. Otherwise, we're just moving numbers around on a spreadsheet. So that's really the decision the board has to make is, do we want to cut this program further than it's already been cut to get from A to B to C to D when we have a choice? And we do have a choice, but it is a choice, a risk that we're taking, that we're cutting into our fund balance. I'm going to try not to talk anymore, which is not always easy for me. Who would like to add something? Ms. Wilson.
I think with the second evaluation and, for example, the observation that the freight farm could be sourced elsewhere, and we heard our superintendent sort of indicate that if we didn't want to take away the instructional coach completely, we can bring that down. I think there's just room for more adjustments, although I do still support the notion that we could possibly allocate it and then see what happens. So that's where I'm landing right now. But ultimately, where we are right now is where we are.
Ms. Krejci.
I know it's on the essential items requiring additional resources slide and not on the academic plan, but I'm thinking that just based on what I'm reading about this Naviance for colleges careers, that this $33,000 for college search, SAT prep, virtual college visits, and resume building maybe isn't, if things are as tight as they are, maybe this isn't the year for that? Oh, it's important. Okay. Okay, you've been there. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Karen, did you want to?
It actually is a part of the guidance plan that is required by the by SED to come down lower. We've got Naviance in place secondary. We're coming lower. So
to middle school then?
It is in middle schools, the 6th grade and fifth and 6th grade, because it's a part of the guidance plan that we've been working on all year and aligning that.
Thanks.
Ms. Smith.
Just wanted to ask a question. Do board colleagues, do you think we're ready to make this decision tonight?
That was actually exactly what I was going to say, so that we're obviously in the same mindset. We want to make this decision tonight because we know how much work follows from it, but it does feel like we're not having enough time to give you all enough time to think about how to react to our concern. I mean, really, we don't want a reduction in force, but we also want teachers who align to the academic plan, not just teachers.
And we've spent more time with it than you have, so.
So do we, we will meet again in 12 days. So that would be another option, is that we take this and see what happens over the next 12 days. Oh, Dr. Chatur.
The school improvement, is there any way to get some grant money or something else to keep that going?
The issue is those grants are falling off because the schools change status. We're always doing grants. I mean, we're doing like $26 million a year of grants, but these were targeted grants based on academic results, and we moved the needle.
Mrs. Adams, do you have a thought?
My thought is that we have spent a lot of time with the budget. We would not come forward with cuts or recommendations that we did not feel we could not accomplish the goal at the end of the day. Understanding the need with TCCE, we do have a backup plan for that. We can absolutely bring that position back into the account. However, the other areas that we are looking at reducing and then looking at finding additional funds for, we are comfortable with that recommendation. We're comfortable with that.
I guess if you can bring back TCCE's coach, then I think we could accept the haircuts in the other areas.
So,
Ms. Alexander-Mann.
so then maybe we are in a position where we can vote. I mean, folks have spent a lot, administration spent a lot of time on it. And maybe we're in a position to vote.
Ms. Smith?
Well, then I think it's a question of, you already talked about a couple of the reductions bringing back. So then it's just how comfortable are we with the reserve amount,
We did just have all 4 of the magnet schools talk about how they need these funds to continue the theme of our magnet theme. We talked about art, we talked about dance, we talked about science, we talked about STEM, we talked about projects, we talked about Spanish. I mean, what's that?
We were
until
at
we
0.
right, and we worked really hard to make sure that we weren't at 0. I understand that.
May I?
Yes.
Just so that I'm clear, we went from 30 to 20 for the magnet school supplies, right? Is that's
Well, the original, I think, was at $30,000 per school. They currently have $50,000 per school from other sources. The option A was $30,000 per school, give or take, if I remember correctly, and we're now at $10,000 per school. So, I mean, I am just the president. I am
hear
looking
you.
for a consensus position. I just know that these schools are not flush. Ms. Krejci.
I mean, if we had to, we could. I'm not saying I don't want to do this either, but the tax cap is 2.89. We could take a position that this 2.25 is more than 0.5% below that. If we feel like taking that risk, we could take that risk.
Ms. Wilson.
I just feel like a no-cut scenario, like resuming the conversation back to D, option D as it stood before. We were not happier, but we were ready to vote at that point. So if we go back to 498, 100, and I know we wanted to supplement with a little bit of the fund, but maybe we need to shift the conversation back there then, because when we came back from the caucus, now we're, you know, in a stalemate. So that's the only observation I have.
Right, and I would like to bring it back to the fact that this is about avoiding a reduction in force, right? And that, to me, the people can't, and I love our teachers, and I'm sure union people are in the room, and union people are going to be listening to this. I don't want to lose any teachers ever, but cabinet defines the program, and then we hire the people to match the program. We are not, our job is not to develop a job for teachers and keep all of our teachers employed. If it comes down to it, we need the program that we believe in, not to keep those individual teachers. Ms. Krejci.
But we need to attract teachers and retain teachers, and a reduction in force is not the message we want to send to all the teachers that Mr. Petrin is working so hard to recruit.
I totally hear and understand that, which is why my preference is to make assumptions that we are going to get the resignations in the right spot and call it 1.6 and fund the program. That was my preference, but we do appear to be at a place where we are not ready to, we're not going to have a consensus position at this point. We were ready to vote yes approximately 45 minutes ago on the full academic plan option D, funded with the fund balance change. We were ready to vote on that. So any place we can go, I mean, I don't understand why we're not ready to vote on that again, but we're not.
Well, could I just offer
Mr.
a
Hogan.
thought? It sounds like it may come down to the TCCE 41,750 and perhaps one other issue. I don't know what that other issue is, but maybe if you could agree on the 41,000 TCC and one other issue, then maybe that's something we could.
I think you're absolutely right.
Work
The
around.
two issues are the money for the schools, the individual school funding money, and the TCCE coach. That's it. That's all that's left on the table, right? Because we're in agreement on Freight Farm and we're in agreement on records management, and it was only those other, they're listed as 3 line items, but they're really 2 line items, the TCCE coach and the additional money per schools. And so,
So that's only 10,000, the additional money for schools.
no, it's more than that. It's for all the schools because there's 2 different line items with per school allocations. There's the magnets at the top. 2 of the magnets are at the top. How much?
Okay. So basically, we're adding 100,000 back in round numbers.
Correct.
So will that do it? All right, roll the numbers, Stephanie. Roll the numbers. What did you add in? The 41 plus?
41, the 10, and the 35.
Okay.
That's what I put back into
Now
the
that was
academic
down
plan.
here. Wait, where's this other school improvement was 80?
We took 35 off. They
Right.
just told me to put the 35 back in.
Okay, 35 plus 10 plus, okay, yep, that's right.
So that goes 441,100.
No, we're all right.
You're good? Yep.
So we have a number.
And then this
Okay.
would be- and that would be at 199.
All right, so the tax levy would be at 1.99%. And the budget number, all you really vote on is the budget total. And the budget total is 260,355,146.
Okay. Is it possible for you to project that you're looking at, or even take a screenshot of it and pass it around, or somehow, or just pass the computer around? We'll take whatever we can get just to see the actual numbers.
I'm logged in, yeah. Cabinet. It should say, okay. Budget changes, and then what column do we want?
This one, the live one.
I is what we want, column I.
You want to keep them?
Yeah, I want to go
first green section over to this other green section. Yes, I through M is what we're working with right now. Yes.
Okay, so column I shows the new numbers that are allocated. The academic plan would total 441,100. We would reduce fund balance by 213,363. And then if you go to column M, line 71, there's your total, 260,355,146 would be the budget total.
Okay. Tomorrow, it doesn't have to be tonight, but can we get the actual use of fund balance, not just a differential from last time? I'm sure you guys have it
Right.
in there. I just can't mentally see
and
it.
it actually would be just a little under 4.8 million because, yeah, from 5 million, 5 million minus 213.
Okay.
So it'd be like 479,
And what was it last year?
4.8.
So it's slightly
Slightly
less,
less.
but
Yeah,
almost
only $13,000
infinitesimally
less.
Right, almost meaningfully less. Okay. Board colleagues, are we ready to vote on the 2019-20 school budget? Okay. Now, Ms. Alexander Mann.
With this projection, what is the tax levy? Is it 1.99?
1.99, it
Perfect.
is that number right there in column J, line 68.
There it is. I got it. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay, I'm just looking to see if in this lovely agenda that we have here, there is a resolution. Mr. Hogan. I'm sorry, Mr. Honeywell. I'm sorry, Mr. Honeywell. Can we vote? How critical is it that we get the legal language around the budget amount, or can we vote on the budget amount?
Yeah, we'll get last year's.
Can we get last year's?
First, you should call your school attorney.
Okay, check. Ching. Got that.
If you adopt the resolution with the number, it can be put into the language tomorrow.
Excellent. Mr. Hogan, I am no younger than I was 2 hours ago. Can you make that screen larger so that we can read the number? These are only for reading. I can't read that number. Okay, you can read it. Okay. I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the following budget for the 2019-20 school year: $260,355,146. Do I have a motion? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Krejci. Any discussion? Mr. Honeywell.
Just note, Sierra, for the record, that it'll have the appropriate language about executing the appropriate tax levy to raise the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Honeywell. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, staff members, all for your hard work. We very much appreciate it, and we hope you understand that even when we do not agree with every single thing you say, we value your work, we value the time you put into it, and we value your commitment to the City School District of Albany and the children who are educated in it. Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Ms. Alexander Mann, seconded by Dr. Tatur. All in favor? That is unanimous.
That was good.